Say what? Let the beat rock. Say what? Say what? Let the beat rock. 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 Say what? Let the beat rock. Say what? Let the beat rock. Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what? Let the beat rock.
Let's go.
Let the beat rock.
Can you say I can fix her? Let me hear you.
go.
I can fix her.
Let the beat rock.
Let's go. That's our man. That's our man, Rooks G from France. That's our man. Let the beat ride. And we have a special guest tonight. Our friend Chase. I didn't mean to laugh at her as a special guest.
we got a special boy with us tonight.
we've got a special boy with us tonight. And listen, first off, our friend here is a musician. Did you know that? Chase Haggard is a musician, and he's got great music on SoundCloud, Instagram. Check out his music. He's got new music coming out next year, and something special in the works. That's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you guys can follow me at Chase Haggard Music on Instagram, and thank you for lying to your audience. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you guys check it out. I mean, people have been around know that you make music, and maybe the new people stopping in, maybe they will find your music and they will hit that follow button on SoundCloud. I mean, I'm on SoundCloud all the time, listening to Chase Haggard. So
Well, and even, Joaquin Phoenix, when you tune into this, which, we're not going to lie, we know you watch Henley pretty much daily. And what we were going to talk about, it's not negative towards you as a person, but you can hit me up too, Joaquin.
yeah, like Peter Griffin says on Family Guy, Joaquin Phoenix, if you're still with us, you are a trooper, and we thank you.
Keep going, buddy. Keep going.
I know that David Fincher is in some kind of chats because of his last movie, The Killer. But Ridley Scott, I think, is probably not in the chat because he is 80-something years old, and because just straight off the bat, this movie fucking sucks. Okay, let's go. Let's just say it like it is. So tonight we're covering the new movie Napoleon by Ridley Scott. And Chase is here to help me out with this and give his insight because he saw the movie before I did. I said, I'm going to see it on Wednesday. And he said, I'm going to see it on Tuesday. And I said, no, actually. Yeah.
No, you're not. I texted him and I, on Instagram, and I went, its own message. Just, I saw the movie. I have a lot to say. I'm not going to say anything right now. And then he calls me and I told him some of my opinions. And then he texted me in the movie about 10 minutes into the movie. He goes, "This is terrible."
Yeah. And to be honest, when I first heard your opinion, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this objectively, right? I'm going to take this, totally objectively, dispassionately, because look, I know movies. Okay. And
I'm not some guy.
Yeah, I'm not just some guy. Okay, I'm a movie guy. My entire personality is movie quotes. So yep. I know this, this director, and I just done the stream on Ridley Scott and how great Ridley Scott, is. And I was looking forward to this movie. I'm not going into this as a Ridley Scott hater. And 10 minutes into the movie, and I almost walked out. It was so fun. It was so bad. I'm gonna do a lot of cussing tonight, okay? Because this movie fucking sucks, and it actually pissed me off how bad the movie was. I could not believe that they did this with this movie. So where do you want to start? That's my opinion. And next time we'll see you where. Okay.
Yeah, I get it, and it's funny. I saw it with three friends. Two of them agreed with me that I said this is just subpar on every level, and I think that because of how low tier most films have been for the last 10 years or so, especially the last 5, right? There's good films that come out, obviously. I said, okay, it was totally subpar. One of my friends, he goes, he's this Albanian guy, goes, that was terrible. That was just horrible. And basically the whole film is about how if you're a simp, you're going to try to overcompensate one day by being a Sigma, but you're still going to die a simp. And Napoleon is such a larger than life person, and they utterly destroy him. And when they show these battles, we could start from the beginning, but there's no character. There's no characters in the movie. There's caricatures, and then things just happen. Stuff happens and historical events happen, and that's it.
Yeah. There's not even caricatures, man. There's nothing. There's nothing. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around how a movie can be this nothing. I mean, you did, state it pretty perfectly when you said things just happen. And in fact, I sent you that Washington Post.
Yep.
that guy of all people wrote a review and pretty much, capture. I'm glad that we're not alone in this. But one thing that's strange is that the reviewers are. I don't know who would see anything in redeeming in this. I guess if you did, I can see why. But I'm not sure. I just don't find anything redeeming in this movie. And like you said about historical figures, one of the problems with historical figures and making movies like this is that the characters are so big, right? They are by definition, and what we know about them in history, they are so large. They are larger than life, especially a guy like Napoleon.
He's a titan. You say the name, right? Napoleon, and you instantly have a reaction because everyone knows that man put his boot mark on history, whether you like him or you don't.
Yeah. And so the problem with that kind of character is that it can be hard to grasp the human side to make a drama, to make a 2 or 3 hour movie about a figure like this. And so oftentimes what directors will do is they'll take a set, it'll be episodic. They'll take a small segment of the person's life and they'll make a movie. Like, for instance, the movie Downfall about Hitler. is it's hard to make a movie about Hitler because he's he's larger than life, and he's a Napoleonic figure. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but that is a good movie because it has a strong supporting cast, and because the other characters are characters. There's a human side to them. We understand their motivations, what they're doing, even what their place in history is. And with this movie, there's none of that. They take his whole life pretty much from the execution of Marie Antoinette through his death, and every single thing that they show, they fail.
Yeah,
and it's hard. It's hard to describe to people how they fail, because I put this up on Instagram and people say, well, maybe it's casting, maybe it's Joaquin Phoenix. It's not. It's not just Joaquin Phoenix is part of this. He's not good in it. Yeah, he's part of the badness in this, and I think that probably looking at this from a dramaturgical point of view, he's probably one of the major reasons that it is bad. But ultimately, it's the director's fault, and
the script. How did this script even get made?
The script is atrocious. The production. There are redeeming things about the production value, like the battle scenes.
Have three battle scenes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And those are great. But just watch those on YouTube, and you do not have to sit through this film. Watch the battle scenes on YouTube. They're pretty cool, except the last battle, which we'll get to. All of his strategy just goes out the window. You have no idea why. It's just, he's sad, so now he has no strategy whatsoever, and he's just a child. But yeah.
Is he? I mean, is he even sad? Right? Okay. So one take I have on this is that, like, for instance, you brought up when we were talking about how there's a scene towards the end of the movie when he comes back from Elba, the 100 Days, and he encounters his former regiment, and they point their guns at him. They have orders to arrest him because he's about to march on Paris. And he says his rousing battle speech. He shows his heart, and he says, I am Napoleon, and we march together. You all are the heroes of Austerlitz. And he doesn't open his fucking mouth.
And I miss you. Do you miss me? Do you remember me? And everyone then just goes, long live the emperor. Yeah. And me and my buddy laughed, and we looked at each other, and we both stuck up our hands in the theater, and we whispered to each other. We go, that's it? That's his speech? Yeah. Are you kidding me? And the music doesn't even crescendo. The music does, like, you don't even have musical cues. That's what's strange. It's like the producer knew and the editor knew that this was bad. Maybe we should start at the beginning, though, right? So the first scene, Marie Antoinette getting executed, getting unalived.
Which by the way, that name is so incredible. The guillotine is named after a guy named Guillotine.
No, I didn't know that.
That was his last name. That would be like, my name's Bob Electric Chair. Right? it's such an amazing last name.
So I guess anyway. if I ever get married and have a kid, it'll be first name Cyanide Haggard. Yeah. Just so people know not to mess with him. But yeah, the first scene, Marie Antoinette getting guillotined, and then it shifts into like their parliament or whatever talking, and then Napoleon goes upstairs, right, and he sits with these people, and this political figure is basically saying, we need this to happen and this to happen, or else the revolution's not going to go well. And then the camera shoots over to Napoleon, and Joaquin Phoenix goes, I can win the battle. I've won all these battles. I won't tell you I can do anything I can't do. And he won't move his bottom jaw, and he's very expressionless. And then sometimes he smiles later in the film and stuff, but from that moment on, that doesn't change. And the few times where you see him joking or laughing, it's odd. And maybe they were trying to make him like autistic or something. And Henley sent me a really funny text where he was like, basically just saying, you can come on the stream, because I said, dude, this is so bad, I don't know what I can even say. And he goes, you can just come on and say, he isn't even autistic, and then just get off the stream. But they try to play it that way the whole film.
Yeah. No, okay. So first of all, Kristen in the chat says, why do people keep hanging on the demoralization of Hollyweird trademark? Does everyone need to grasp onto being perpetually entertained by, creepers? And that's a good point. But this movie doesn't even do that. It doesn't even get to that level. It's just nothingness. It's just shit. There's not even a moral question in the movie, right? So you would think that what Chase was just talking about, the setup with Marie Antoinette gets guillotined, right? And then we have regicide. We have the height of the French Revolution, and we've got just bathing in blood.
Yep.
But that's it. There's no reason for that. There's no distinction. There's no impact. There's no none of the characters show any that it even happens. It's like everyone in the movie is an NPC, and they're just sort of existing. And with the Napoleon character, it would be tempting to make him into an autist. I mean, it would because his genius sort of shows those tendencies, and when you read his letters, they kind of veer into that sort of territory. You could do that with what was the movie they made about Winston Churchill a few years ago with Gary Oldman? That's basically what they did with that movie, right? Yeah. He runs the British Empire from his bathtub, right? And he's in pajamas all the time. But they don't do that. They don't even do that. He has zero charisma, zero personality, zero self-awareness, zero awareness of anybody else, zero friends, zero humor, zero strategy or tactics. He's got nothing. There's nothing.
And then when he does these battles, right? So the first battle, so he meets up with that guy, and the guy tells him, we need to take back this city, right? Or this fortress. And then he's like, oh, okay, I can do it. And then he goes and he does it, and they organize this plan, and there's this cool battle, and they get up and they're fighting. And the whole point was get them on the other side of this, these barracks, basically, so that they can fire the cannons at the British ships. And that was cool. It opened up. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, okay, I get it. He's an eccentric strategist, right? He made them think it was about killing all them, but no, it's just to blow up the ships. And then they do that. And then he goes to this party, and he meets Josephine, his future wife. And he just stares at her, and she walks up. She goes, why are you staring at me? He goes, I wasn't staring. And then she just keeps looking at him, and he goes, okay, I was staring. And then there's a montage later where they go out, and they are eating dinner, and he just sits there staring at her. Yeah. And then at one point, he pushes the table a little further out and then just pulls her chair towards him, and he just keeps staring. And it shows her, and she's like into it. And there's no charisma at all. Like you said, this continues throughout the whole film, where after these scenes of him being a petulant child, or just like a horned up child, or a fool, and just being angry and throwing a fit, he goes out on the battlefield and does these brilliant strategies. And I'm sitting in my chair going, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that this guy has anything going on upstairs. And that's where they failed. You can't have just negatives shown about someone and want them to be eccentric, but then brilliant in another way without showing me the brilliance. That doesn't make sense.
You can't have the confluence of geopolitical events coming into this swirling mass of death in European history and have a guy come in and sweep everybody aside and take charge and do all of these things and not at least, like you said, believe it in his eyes. Right. Yep. In fact, it's so bad that I felt like that Joaquin Phoenix is, it's not that I dislike Joaquin Phoenix as an actor. I mean, I think he's got good roles. I think that the 2001 movie Buffalo Soldiers is his best movie. I think that he's good in other roles. He can be funny.
And he's good in Gladiator, another Ridley Scott film.
He's great. Okay, so he's great in Gladiator, and the contrast is that he has lines in Gladiator that even at the time when the movie came out, I remember the reviewers talking about how bad some of these lines are. So for instance, there's one part where he says, Rome is like fishes, and we will come and we shall nibble. We shall nibble. Do you remember that part in Gladiator?
No.
Very weird line. And now that I look back on it, I think this had to be the writer. This couldn't be Joaquin Phoenix improvising in this scene. Why would they let him do this, this early in his career? But he's good in that movie because he plays a degenerate, sick guy who kills Marcus Aurelius, kills his own dad, and he's so degenerate that he wants to be the gladiatorial, star as the emperor. He's very near, he's trying to emulate Nero. So when you look at him and you look in his eyes, you think this guy's twisted and sick, but there's something wrong with him. In this movie, there's none of that. There's no guessing about his personality. There's no, when he's sitting at the table with Josephine that first time, like you said, and he's doing nothing at that point in the movie, since it's so early on in the movie, I was thinking that, okay, he's not saying anything because he exudes charisma. He chooses his words carefully, but that's not what happens at all. He's just sitting there. He has nothing to do. And when I watched that and then I realized it afterwards, I go, it's clear to me that the actor did not know what to do in this scene and had no grasp of the character. He just had no understanding of the character. And by the way, Josephine is heinous, right? Vanessa Kirby is a beautiful woman. She's going to be she's a rising sort of Hollywood star. She's, she's great in her role. She was in the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. She's a beautiful woman. She has, she could be a great actress, but they don't give her anything in this. And the sexual scene, right, where they're sitting there, I mean, it's so awkward, right? So all right, so I'll narrate what happens. So they're on their first date, right, in this empty room, and she turns the chair aside and she like hikes up her dress, and then she says something like,
there's a secret down here.
Yes. and he's like, but he doesn't. He's not even a perv. I mean, like, you could have taken that he would be a perv, but he's just like, I'm in space.
Yeah.
Right.
She goes, there's a secret. There's a secret down here. And once you look, you'll always want it. And it's this really weird scene. And that's repeated numerous times, where there's these strange sex scenes that are repeated numerous times. And even one of them, he walks into a room where this is when he's emperor, and all the women are like, dressing her and fixing up her hair and stuff. And he walks in and just starts stamping his foot and just going,
oh my God.
like an animal.
He's neighing like a horse. Yeah.
He's neighing like a horse. And it's so weird. And there's nothing behind it. And that's why when we were talking, and even on the thumbnail, they just go, well, I want these things to happen with this character. That's what they did. And there's nothing behind it.
DJ in the chat said, she's a man.
No, I can fix her, dude.
That would have been a secret.
Yeah. Here's a secret. He just goes, oh.
It's Ray Finkel. It's Ray Finkel. Right. No. But so the justification of if the point of this is that her sexual wiles are so exotic, if she's the most beautiful woman and she's just entrances Napoleon, she has like this witchy hold on him because of her sexuality, then you would think they would show that somewhere else in the movie, but they didn't. It was just, that was a one-off. Yep. That was it. Until later on in the film when she said, so there's a scene, I'm skipping forward ahead a little bit here, but there's a scene where he gets cocked when he's in Egypt, and he deserts the army, he comes back, and he's so angry with her, but it's a weird anger. Right. It's like, I remember he says, you were a fat, disgusting little pig. And I thought, did he just ad-lib this? Because he just took that line from Alec Baldwin's voicemail to his daughter. Do you remember that voicemail?
Yeah. He starts insulting her after he leaves Egypt. And the Egypt thing was, he just shows up and just shoots a cannon and then walks away and wins. And they're like, I'm so badass. And it's really weird. There's no depth to it. And he goes back and then, he's insults her, calls her a fat, disgusting pig, which you don't believe he thinks that. And then afterwards they're talking and he goes, admit that you are nothing without me. You'll never be anything without me ever. And she says it. And then a couple minutes later, the scene like flips over and they're sitting on the couch and she goes, you're nothing without me. You're the one who needs me. And he goes, I'm the one that needs you. Yes. And it's, what just happened?
You're like, why did this flip? And if she says that to him, why wasn't he like, no, that's not it at all. I'm everything without you. Like, you're not, you literally didn't. I'm Napoleon. You're just some.
So they wanted to paint this simp picture the whole time, and then also show him conquering everything in his sight, and then becoming and rising to emperor, and you don't believe it. You don't believe a scene.
It's as if as if in the macrocosm, as if his exterior lust for power and territory is a compensation for his inner life and his insecurities and his feelings, and his insecurities in the bedroom. But that's not what the movie is. They don't even show that. My sister says your gun was digging into my hip. Yeah. Lois Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel Einhorn. No, but yeah. Even that scene where he takes where he takes the castle or whatever, right? And he shoots his artillery at the bad guys. Well, look, in reality, he was, and they show this, he was made a brigadier general. He's made a brigadier general at age 24. He's the youngest one in the French military. He's obviously a brilliant strategist, but all they show him in the heat of battle, and he's, cutting guys with his saber. They show a horse get blown apart by a cannonball. So it's like, okay, well, this is a destructive movie, a destructive event. But then when it's over, he digs into the horse for the cannonball and throws it to his brother. Right. And he said, I don't even know what he said. He said something like, send this to mama.
Yeah. And you don't know it's his brother at that point either.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, what the fuck? Because Napoleon's, all of his siblings were put on the thrones, everywhere. His son later is born. That's what the movie sort of becomes. His son is born, and he immediately makes him the king of Rome because Napoleon he's ended the Holy Roman Empire. He's destroyed it with the destruction of Prussia. But there, you wouldn't know any of that in the film. And another thing is that with movies like this, a lot of times, a real historical movie can end up being like a history lesson. It can just be a teaching tool, right? So it sort of loses its drama, and we're just, these are the events that the guys went through. But this isn't even accurate. It's not even that. And spoiler alert, he dies at the end.
Spoiler alert, guys. Napoleon is dead. If you did not know that, I'm sorry. We should have probably had a big spoiler warning here. Napoleon is no longer alive.
Yeah, spoiler alert. He wins the battles until he loses, and then he dies. And
he wins Waterloo.
Yeah. He wins Waterloo. Yes.
But this is why this movie is tough to talk about because it's, there's like the historical aspect of it, but then with how schizophrenic the writing is and the pacing and the attempt at drama is, it's so empty and heartless and just empty that it's to me, it's very difficult to talk about. Like, this is a tough one.
Somebody brought up earlier in the chat about AI. Do you think that's the key to this? Do you think the movie was AI? I mean, that it was written, that the script was an AI script. It's so odd that it's so bad that might be part of it. That might be what I'm missing here.
I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, it could be, but I would be surprised. I mean,
even if it were that, I think it's so bad that it probably takes a human badness, because even if it were AI, it would be taking from sources. It would be Googling sources about Napoleon, and we would have things, right? We would have facts, but we don't even have that in the film. The French Revolution, the movie begins with the French Revolution, and so after he's made brigadier general, and then he meets Josephine, and they get married, right?
He tries to fix her.
Yes, he tries to fix her. They get married in an Enlightenment style French Revolutionary wedding, where they walk up in front of an old guy, and he says, "You are married now, okay?" And they say, "Okay," and they sign the thing. In the background, we have what we learn is Napoleon's brother, and then we have Talleyrand in the background, and then we see the scenes with the post commit. It's now the what do you call it? Not the Committee for Public Safety. It's the I forget what they called it.
FEMA.
Yes, they have the FEMA crew with Robespierre in charge. So we get a little bit of Robespierre, and Robespierre is in a kind of a kangaroo court hearing, as they did, and then the people swarm, and then he like points the gun at a bunch of people. He's got like a Derringer, and then he like tries to blow his head off, blows a hole in his in his cheek. This was actually cool though. He blows a hole in his cheek, and I think it's Napoleon's brother goes up to him and goes like, "Yeah, you missed," and sticks his finger in his cheek.
It was the politician guy.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So now
Yep.
Robespierre gets the guillotine, and then we have the transition into the new government, right? Where Talleyrand, I think it's Talleyrand, comes up and says we're going to form a tribunate, and we're going to have 3 tribunes. It's going to be you, sorry, the consulate. So you're going to be the consul. We're going to have three consuls. It's going to be Talleyrand, another guy, and Napoleon. And he says, would you be one of these guys? And his response is, consul? And he kind of walks away.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
exactly. It's almost like he was a 3rd grader, and a girl came up to him and goes, "I kind of like you," and he goes, "I like you too," and then just turns away and walks and just leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, Napoleon had a comprehensive understanding of the politics of the time, and that's how he was able to sweep power the way he did. Now, this worked against him in the end, because he unleashed something that he had no real understanding of that it would come back to haunt him in terms of nationalism. But he would understand the implications of being made the consul, because he later states that he follows in the footsteps of Caesar and Alexander. And by the way, that line is in a letter to Josephine that he is doing in a voiceover. And when he says it, this pissed me off so much. It's like they took one take of Joaquin Phoenix in Calabasas, right, saying, the Battle of Leipzig, and I follow in the footsteps of Alexander the Great and Caesar. And you're like, there's no enunciation. There's not even any. It's not even just not acting.
That statement should have so much gravitas.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So he would understand being made consul, because the twin consuls were the government of Republican Rome, right? So like, for instance, that's what led to Caesar and Pompey, right? And then we get the assassination in the Senate, and then later Caesar is made dictator, which Napoleon basically emulates, because he's the consul, but he becomes the supreme consul with dictatorial powers. And then later he rises to emperor, right? Which is what they were afraid of with Caesar, but they kill Caesar, and then Augustus becomes Caesar. So, but there's none of that in the movie. There's no understanding of what he's accomplishing or what he's doing. I mean, this is monumental. This is the changing tide of Europe that has a relevance to now. I mean, who cares in the end about a movie about Napoleon now, unless you're going to show the movie in relation to why it's important now, and how this is everything that is in the movie, or that would have been in the movie, or the anything about that is relevant now, because the Enlightenment is the reason that we have all the shit now, right? The everything about the Enlightenment, the getting rid of the order and getting rid of the social order and establishing a new social order and new months and new names and complete democracy, and complete anarchy leading into democracy, and then destruction and death, and there's none of that. It's not important at all. Yeah, and then Pompeii is the city. Pompey is the guy's name.
Pompey. It's funny because just like the scene you just talked about, where the guy comes up, do you want to be first consul? And then just walks away, and then he is, and it shows that scene. Later, political mover and shaker, and he gets the like French ambassador, like foreign ambassador or something, comes up to him and goes, I think you should be king. You could like unite Europe in peace. And he goes, ha, me, king? And then it just cuts to his coronation. It just cuts to his coronation.
Yeah. Yeah. If he had gone, oh, fabulous, or been some sort of degenerate, I will be king, la, la, la.
Or even just give me a maniacal laugh. Give me something to speak with me. Yes, king.
Yeah, there's going to be some real changes around here. Right?
Yeah, go on. Give me the crown, boy. Give me the crown. I would have taken that. I would have taken Joaquin Phoenix turning into Sling Blade over what we got.
Mm-hmm. I declare prima nocta. All the women shall be humped. Something.
I prima you.
Licks Talleyrand's face.
I would, yeah, it would have been more entertaining if he just looked over at Talleyrand when he said that. And this would have honestly made the film make a little more sense than he put his hand on his shoulder and he goes, and this gives you power over me? And he just turns into Bane. That would have been more in line with who Napoleon, part of what he was.
Do you feel in charge? Yes.
Do you feel the power of the French?
Shouts out to Buster out there who drops $10 and says, a movie about nothing like Seinfeld, but without comedy. Yes, it's exactly what it is.
And there's parts that are funny, but then there's parts where, like, at one point the British consulate or ambassador comes and he was trying to make peace with Britain, and the guy comes and he has Napoleon acts like a petulant child. He goes, I take it as a personal slight that you guys did not immediately accept my peace request. And the British guy just smugly kind of looks at him. And then Napoleon, like a child, like flips his arms out and goes, you think you're so great because you have boats.
Yes.
And he's just a child.
Cringe. Yeah.
And me and my buddy laughed.
Cringe.
And then 2 seconds later, we go, wait, this isn't supposed to be funny. It's so uneven. Yeah, and then when he goes to winning these battles and becoming king, I don't believe it. I know it happened in history, and I trust the historical account on that, but in the film, I don't believe a thing. I don't believe it at all.
Let me give a shout out real quick to Pure Blood Anglo Christian, who becomes a new member. Thank you for the membership. And also, big time shout out to the real John Connor, who drops $50 and says, I appreciate you. Hey, I appreciate you too. I'm thankful for you because it's Thanksgiving. Listen, you guys, please support me here. Give me some money for going to see this Napoleon movie and talking about it and reading these 2 books and being so disappointed with this fucking movie. The affiliates, listen, the affiliates are not going to be happy. All right. We have a family audience and I promise not to do it again. All right. So look, thank you, John Connor, for dropping that $50. Really appreciate you. You guys, if you want to support, please look at the links that Jason and the other mods are dropping there, and you can grab a membership. Please think about supporting directly. That is the PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. You can also donate chat, and you can super chat, and you can do all that stuff, all that fun stuff. And we have a special guest dropping in a second. Just like
and the thing is that a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, yeah, it's all fun and games up here when, you know, Henley and I are chatting and all the streams that he does and all the content he gives you guys. When he called me, it sounded like a child realizing that death existed in the world. I hadn't heard such despair from Henley or anyone really in my life. It's like seeing, you know, a bird lying dead and there's a 3-year-old with you and they go, why isn't the bird getting up? And Henley just on the phone was saying to me, why wasn't Napoleon good? And I go, we live in a fallen world, man. We live in a fallen world.
Yes, I was as full of despair as Napoleon was supposed to be full of melancholy in this movie. Gentlemen, I have melancholy because I miss you. It'd be funny if the guy in that scene was like, wanker, and shot him. I mean, in the movie, it would be a fake. Yeah. It would be fake. Yeah, of course, it would be a fake. Just for the and
it's not a character. It's not a character trait for someone. This isn't a character to me. This is not acting to me. Just not moving your bottom jaw as much as you can fight it while you talk. That's not entertaining. And Napoleon, again, I know we've said it a bunch of times, but someone out there, please. And I know you're watching, Joaquin Phoenix. We know you're watching, dude. We've been told. Make another movie, hire a different actor, and give them any bit of charisma, anything.
Yeah. Shouts out to Tommy Jones, who drops 5 memberships there. Really appreciate you. Yeah, the stiff jaw thing would be interesting if, you know, that is a character trait in Mussolini. That is an actual, I mean, when you watch the speeches of Mussolini speaking, he juts his jaw out in this, you know, Emilio Fabro, you know, and he juts his jaw out like in this sort of Caesarean bust, right?
That's not all he has.
That isn't all he has. Yeah. He matches it with his physical presence and his charisma and his speaking ability. But Joaquin Phoenix doesn't have that. And Napoleon was a extremely charismatic and terrifying figure. Everyone in Europe was, not everyone, but people in Europe were absolutely terrified of this guy. because, I mean, many people have brought up, Real John Connor sent me something about some of the Russian monks at the time who were saying to their they were saying, usually we pray for peace, right? But at this point, they were saying we got to do everything we can because this guy is this guy is, if not the Antichrist, he is certainly an archetype. And that's true. I mean, now we look back and we see that it's true. They do actually show that at the end of the movie. They show the stats. It's weird how they do it, but they show the stats of how many were dead at the time. And there's minimum 3 million people that died in the wake of this guy, right?
Yeah.
Now, war, now it's a complex issue, and people, die for honor and glory, amongst other things. And there are various reasons to fight. But there's no denying that Napoleon. Okay, so I just went to Thanksgiving at my friend's house, and he's a combat vet from Iraq and Afghanistan. He's a colonel in the U.S. military, and one of the guys at Thanksgiving that I met is he's a history professor at the Marine Corps University at Quantico. And I thought, okay, now I can talk to, I can get some insight in Napoleon, and this guy knows. And basically what he said to me was that he said that Napoleon is so important because he's not only a product of the Enlightenment, but he exists at a time where he alone is able to bring together these changing forces in Europe. He's able to bring together the politics and the sort of democratization that occurred with the French Revolution, mixed with his supreme discipline in the Army Corps. Right. So he's able to change battle tactics and sweep through Europe. But at the same time, he loses it because he is only a military mind in the end. And his goal is pure domination of Europe. But he's unable to do that because he doesn't understand the political components that go along with it in the end. And that's interesting because Napoleon I got 2 books here that I read. That I reread for this. One is The Age of Napoleon, Alistair Horn. Another one is Robert Asprey's The Rise of Napoleon. And this professor recommended a couple other books to me that I'm gonna have to get, which are like 3-volume sets on Napoleon. But basically, what he said, what the books say, is that Napoleon was a micromanager par excellence. There wasn't a single aspect of French society that he was not involved in by, like, specifically. So for instance, it talks about how when he ordered Napoleon there was an attempted assassination, and there was a bomb that blew up, kind of like Hitler at the Wolfschanze. But in the wake of that, Napoleon destroys a couple of churches, and then he orders some new buildings put up. And when he finds out that one of the bricklayers is stealing bricks, this gets to him. And so he writes a letter, he fires off, and he's like, have this man arrested immediately. I mean, he's involved in he's involved in the censorship. He tells the arts what to write and what not to write. He won't allow some operas. He's involved in morals. Women can wear this, but not this, because of his personal taste. I mean, everything. And he runs the entire empire from wherever he happens to be. So for instance, he's in a tent, he's in Germany, he's in Russia on the steppe, and he's writing letters, and he's involved. He's kind of Trumpian in a way because he never sleeps, and he's firing off tweets at night from his desk. Right. But that ends up being his downfall because he doesn't establish a system that's robust enough to deal with
delegate
the opposing forces. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in the film, you get none of that. And even at Thanksgiving dinner tonight, I was hanging out with my friends, had an amazing time. And again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Hope you got to spend time with your friends, family, friends if you're not near family. But I was talking to my buddy's like 14-year-old son who knows a bunch about history, and he was just laying into the film too, going, how could they do this? And he's 14. And then even the things that we know about him, like, oh, he's short. No, that's British propaganda that he was short. He's not he was a normal sized dude at the time. And it's incredible that they show none of this in the film, that he just bumbles his way into becoming emperor.
Yeah. The part of the movie is how it becomes the fact that Josephine can't bear an heir. Right. Not even just a male heir, which ventures into Henry VIII territory because, if that were the case, then we would see that, primogeniture is a thing. You have to have this for your lineage. You go through these wives. But Napoleon married a woman who was widowed. Her husband was he was a general. I think he was killed in a battle. And so then she's arrested during the revolution. She has grown kids. And there's only one scene where we see any of her grown up kids. And that's at the end when this mutant tells, this was tripping me out, dude. I was tripping out when I saw this. I was like, what am I seeing? Is this real? Because the daughter, the person they chose for the daughter to tell Napoleon that Josephine is dead. Oh, by the way, she's dead. Your love of your life is dead. And it's like, what? Where'd this come from? Her head is smaller than her neck and her shoulders. And at first I'm like, this is just a screen playing tricks on me. But then I was sitting there like, what the fuck am I seeing, dude? What's this peanut head person?
Henley literally texted me that same exact thing, just going, I'm so disturbed. Why was was Josephine's daughter a mutant? Her shoulders and neck are bigger than her head. And then when we talked on the phone after he watched the movie, he couldn't stop talking about the daughter just being freakishly proportioned. And that was the most interesting part of the film to him. Was the odd proportions of an actress.
Very, very weird. Yeah, it's very weird. So he's with Josephine. He goes off to Egypt, right? Like you mentioned, he goes to Egypt for. He says, the reason he goes to Egypt in the movie is he says, the British have such a stranglehold on us. You know what we'll do? We'll go to Egypt and we'll destroy the British in Egypt. And he goes and they show the battle lines and he misfires a cannonball at the pyramids. Right. And then, so then they show after the battle. Oh, he's on his horseback. Right. And he's in his, what did I freeze? Oh.
No, you're good.
Should be good. Maybe it's just me.
I think you're good. It's frame rate's slowing down, but I think you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he's on horseback and he's kind of looking up like this. Wow, there's the Sphinx. Wow, what's that? Right? And he says, it's terribly hot here. And you're like, yeah, you're in a fucking wool jacket, dude. You're in Egypt.
Everyone was in their full uniforms, and then they go up and you're thinking there's going to be another battle scene. And in the theater, I'm thinking, okay, cool, finally, like give me another battle scene. Let's do something that's actually entertaining. And then they just shoot the cannons. They shoot 2 cannons. They hit the pyramids, and everyone just falls down and bows to him. And then he just turns and walks away and just yes. Yeah,
we would think we would see the Mamelukes or. Napoleon, one of the things that he was criticized for, especially in the British press at the time, was, he had 1,000 people slaughtered at Jaffa and in Palestine. And so this is what leads us to, this is relevant now, right? They go to fight the British in Palestine, and then that leads on to the Balfour Agreement, 100 years later. And then now we have all these problems abroad. And there's none of that. I know that when the British took Palestine in the late 19th century, they were playing golf off the head of the Sphinx. I have pictures of it in this book. A guy's teeing off. He's using the head of the Sphinx as a driving range into the desert. But there's none of that. And there is one thing that's interesting, that Napoleon brought along a bunch of scientists and mathematicians to Egypt. And that is what led to this huge proliferation of Egyptology in Europe. People were interested in Egypt. He brought Cleopatra's Needle back. We see all the obelisks in France and in England, and there's all this architecture that's Egyptian. It was a huge cultural thing, and all they show is that he walks up to a mummy. Yeah. They take the mummy off. He stands on a box, and he takes his hat off, puts it on the head of the mummy, and looks into his eyes. But this could have been very good.
Yeah.
He looks into the mummy's eyes, and then he puts his head down, and you think that he's hearing the mummy whisper to him, but the mummy moves, the mummy shifts in the sarcophagus, and then he kind of turns around and goes, Yo, what's up? Based homeschool mom. Here's Rachel Wilson, everybody. We got special guests. What's going on? Happy
Hi.
Thanksgiving.
Hey,
Hello, gentlemen. So you
Yes.
didn't like the Napoleon movie? I
No.
take
no. Did you see it?
it. No,
No.
but I don't think I'll
Yeah.
waste my money on it now.
Yeah, well, the thing is that, a bunch of people responded and they said, oh, it's too bad. I was going to go see it with my family. Or they say, I'm going to still check it out. And this is one of the only times I can remember saying to someone, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It's not even about wasting money, right? This is insulting how bad this is. It really, I felt like, I was like, am I being trolled with this movie? What am I missing here?
We're
Is Ridley
saying this-
Scott sitting there
Yep.
fucking laughing at me in the theater for sitting
Yep.
here watching this piece of shit?
He's got a live stream of you.
Fuck this movie, dude.
We're saying this with the same seriousness as some grizzled war vet who just got back from Vietnam, and he's talking to an 18-year-old going, I want to help the war effort. And the guy's going, you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Okay.
go into this movie.
Yeah.
Rachel, you do
Well-
not. You don't want no part of this.
Well, as
Dewey
Bona-
Cox, you want no
Sounds
part of this.
As bona fide, decorated veterans of the meme wars and the culture wars, this movie fucking sucks, dude. I'm sorry. I promise I won't do it again. All right. But it really pissed me off. I just could not believe that you would play me like this watching this movie. I couldn't believe that you would waste the opportunity, all of the money and the resources and the time and the breadth of historical data. I mean, just there's so much that one of the things that the book talks about is that the people in France at the time were unaffected by Napoleon in a number of ways because they just lived through the Reign of Terror. Everyone's dead. There's blood everywhere. And they don't really, it's kind of like now in America because the wars are always outside of France. They're always away.
Yeah.
So we have soldiers coming back, but who cares, right? We can,
Right.
Drink laudanum and dance the waltz. And who gives a shit about Napoleon?
Laudanum.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm having a glass of laudanum right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that sounds
liquid
very
opium.
nice. That sounds very nice. My love, Josephine, she's the light of my life, and she likes to drink wine as well. That's how the character is the whole time, Rachel. This is Napoleon, Josephine.
Okay, I don't know a ton about Napoleon, but I have read all of his letters to Josephine because they are a masterclass in cuckery.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just based on the letters, he didn't seem like an overly stoic guy with no
No.
personality.
He's an embodiment of charisma, right? That's the whole thing. Is he's a brilliant
Yeah.
strategist and the embodiment of charisma. But talking like this, Josephine, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Please
Really?
don't let my
Okay.
sunshine go away.
Okay, so he is stoic to a point on the battlefield, right? But to a psychopathic extent, where he's pure strategy and the numbers. It's all about the set pieces and how we're gonna die. I mean, this is like it's megalomania. I mean, that sounds trite, but I guess that's the best way you can boil it down. But he's also, like you said, he's also Corsican. Right, he's got blood flowing through his
Yeah.
veins. He spoke Italian until he was 11 years old. He didn't speak French when he was little.
Yeah.
So he's Mediterranean. He's hot blooded, right? And so the simpery would be understandable if they showed that as a kind of a fiery passion. I mean, because look, the guy dominates the Western world. He can have any woman that he wants, but the way that the movie shows it is very weird. And like you said, his letters, when he writes to her, there's the thing that I told you, Rachel, about when he's writing the letters and he says, yes, I want to kiss you in all the secret dark places and tickle your toes.
I just love that all of your Napoleon quotes always start, yes.
Yeah.
Everything starts with, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have some of them here. Because I did this research because I did a stream on the Great Simpson history with Pearl. And
Yeah.
let me just so you guys can understand, I'll just read you a quick quote because
Can
these
you
are
do it in an
hilarious.
accent?
Well, wouldn't it? What kind of accent would he have had?
Anything. Just anything.
Yeah,
It was the
anything.
performance was so bad. Me and BLA need
Yeah.
any kind of performance. Anything,
Yeah.
please.
Just not
can just
Calabasas,
freestyle it.
California.
Just
Yeah.
not this.
Oh.
Just please don't read it like this, Rachel.
Just not like I have my jaw wired shut.
Yes. Yes, that's not
Okay,
entertaining.
I'll do what they always do in movies, where anytime they're doing a period piece, it doesn't matter where or when, they're British. Have you guys ever noticed that? They're just doing like a period piece about like
They should have done that. Yeah.
Everyone's British. If it was before 1900, just you're British. That's It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter when. You just speak like you're British. So I'll do it like that. Okay, so just for context, you guys, this chick is older than him. She's already kind of ran through. She already has a reputation. She's divorced, which is kind of a lot for this time period. And he's just so over the top in love with her. And she's kind of like, ugh, whatever. If you buy my shit, if you pay for my stuff, like, fine.
I'll like marry you or whatever.
Yeah,
sure.
like whatever. Because she would tell all her friends, look, I don't even really like him that much. I'm super not into him. He's kind of gross, but he pays for all my stuff and I like expensive shit. So, you know. Yeah. So he's writing her these letters from out in the field because, like Hendo was saying, he's always out in the field, you know, ruling France from whatever war he's doing. And he would write her letters like every day. Like all
and
the
ask
time.
her to write him every day too, right?
Yeah, and she would never write back, which is something.
Why haven't you written to me?
Yeah,
are you giving others what is mine? How could you do this to me? You love me. Tell me you love me.
Okay, let me see if I can do better than Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, anyone can. Yes.
This is from April 1796, and he's writing to Josephine, and he says, "I have your letters of the 16th and the 21st. There are many days when you don't write. What do you do then? No, my darling, I am not jealous, but sometimes worried. Come soon. I warn you, if you delay, you'll find me ill. Fatigue and your absence are too much. Your letters are the joys of my days, and my days of happiness are not many. Juno is bringing 22 flags to Paris. You must come back with him, you understand? Hopeless sorrow, inconsolable misery, sadness without end. If I am so unhappy as to see him return alone. Adorable friend, he will see you, he will breathe in your temple. Perhaps you will even grant him the unique and perfect favor of kissing your cheek. And I shall be alone and far, far away. But you are coming, aren't you? You are going to be here beside me in my arms, on my breast, on my mouth. Take wing and come, come. A kiss on your heart, and one much lower down, much lower.
So
it's so flowery and so extravagant. That's nothing. You don't get that in this film whatsoever.
So they should have done the cat.
Talked, so
they should have done the Cat Williams. They should have done the Cat Williams translation of this. Bitch, get your big ass across the ocean, right?
Dude, oh my gosh!
But you know what probably happened?
I'm bricked up. You better get back. You know what I'm saying?
What probably happened was he had his personal courier, take the letters to Josephine and read, and she was like, read the letters to me, and then he read the letters, and she was like, sexy, and then she cucked Napoleon with the courier. Right. Because when he's in Egypt, one of the things that he meets with his only friend, by the way, he's got no friends, which is weird. He's got no friends or advisors of any kind in the movie. I mean, you would have someone. There's no supporting cast, but this one dude comes to him and he's like, I'm your, what they call a friend, apparently, in the other world. Can I tell you anything? And Napoleon's like sitting there eating. Right. Which, again, here's another thing. All of the books make it very clear constantly that Napoleon did not give a shit about eating at all, because the French emphasis on cuisine and these dinner parties and the salons and all this stuff, they said every time Napoleon went to one of these things, he would scarf up his meal in 15 minutes or less. He said sex and food should be done in less than 15 minutes because he's a military guy.
Yeah,
that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but the movie is constantly hit. Oh, it's much more embarrassing than that in the movie. He's a beast. He's a and not even an Al Crowley sex obsessed beast. He's just some fucking barnyard animal when he's with his wife. It's disgusting.
At points, and we brought this up earlier, but so at different points, there's these sex scenes to illustrate this I said caricature, and I think I agree when BLA said, no, it's not even a caricature. It's so boring. It's so dead and empty. But at one point, I'm trying to paint the scene of him as this just horned up, petulant, teenager in an adult body. He walks into a room when he's emperor, and his wife's in there. Josephine's in there. They're doing up her hair and stuff. You know how her little maids and stuff would do. He walks in and just starts going, and starts stamping his foot like a horse and just going, and she goes, oh, you filthy beast. I just set my hair. And he goes, and she goes, oh, fine, let's do it. And then everyone leaves. And then he does his thing. It's so strange. And he never shows her any affection too.
This? I didn't.
Ridley
Scott.
Scott. Yeah. There was a black man in the audience behind me. And when he was doing that, he goes, what the fuck? I turned around. I said, "That's what's up." What the fuck? Yeah. No. Okay. So my analysis of that scene, and I mean this seriously, is that in Tropic Thunder, there's a scene where Tom Coombe, who's playing Joel Silver / Weinstein, is Zoom conferencing the other, the production. Right. They're on location. And he says, get control of your fucking actors or I will shut you down, right? And that's when he
punch
gets
that guy
grip.
in the face
really
hard.
Who's the key grip? Who's the key grip? Punch him right in the face. So he goes over and he punches the guy right in the face, the director. Well, that to me is they should have had him in charge of this movie. I mean, look, say what you will about Weinstein and Joel Silver. Those fucking guys can make movies, okay? They just can. All right. And this has none of that because it's totally out of control. And what I saw was that Joaquin, I bet you anything that Joaquin Phoenix came on set that day and he said, let me ad lib something here. Let me improvise. And he did this. And Ridley Scott was like, all right, I got to go to lunch. Take one, cut and print. That's it. There was no thought about the fact that some movies are great with improvisation, especially when you have, a master actor who is, playing the character, he embodies the character. But this is not that. This is like, you let this guy get away with this? You let him do this in the scene? This is insulting.
Who do you think is more to blame? Is it the actors or is it the director?
Well, the script itself was terrible. Ridley
Scott is 100% to blame for this movie. And
Did he
say
write
that. No, he didn't write it, but he doesn't have final cut, probably with the studio, but the director is in charge. We're talking about a military movie. He's the general. He's the guy in charge of all this stuff. He's putting his name to it. It's his production. He's the guy and he's in charge. And I say this because I love Ridley Scott. I think Ridley Scott makes great movies. I just did a stream on the search for the hero and redemption through honor in Ridley Scott movies, which is a constant theme. To me, his movies elevate the human condition in the art of filmmaking. I mean, even his lesser known movies like Black Rain and what's the one he did with Russell Crowe, where it's a love story, or I haven't seen Thelma and Louise.
Blade Runner, Gladiator, obviously. Gladiator is a classic film about the unstoppable human spirit and and it's so simple where it's just a guy's trying to get to his kids.
Yeah,
that's it.
White Squall. I mean, he's done so many great movies, and a lot of times, so his movies are great. I think because he really understands filmmaking with regard to war. To showing like Black Hawk Down. I mean, that's one for the boys. I mean, that movie is fucking. I don't agree with the morals. I don't agree with the system in place, but the movie's badass.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're just the Delta Force go in, they just aerate this building and they're just and so that's cool to watch, as a movie. I mean, he understands showing that. There's a scene in Black Hawk Down where they're driving through the city in Humvees and Tom Sizemore is in shotgun. He's the sergeant, just kind of like in Saving Private Ryan. And the driver gets shot up and he's blinded with blood. And Tom Sizemore says, "Put your foot on the gas, keep driving." And it's a great scene. It's manly. It's fucking warfare. You're driving through this gritty thing, and we have a goal, we have an objective. You got to survive the night. Each character has a life of their own, and there's none of that in this. There's just nothing.
No, it's the characters are set pieces to get to the historical events happening, to also paint the caricature of Napoleon as just I keep saying a horny, petulant, angry teenager. And when he gets crowned as emperor, me and my buddy sitting in theater, we're going, I don't believe it. There's nothing to see in this guy. I don't believe that he can go out and win a battle. I don't believe it.
Yeah, shouts out to old movie music in the chat. Claire, beautiful Claire. We call her beautiful Claire. She's wonderful Claire. She says The Duelist is his most underrated movie, his first film, very Barry Lyndon, and it's phenomenal. Yeah, you're exactly right. Harvey Cuts. I mean, that's a great movie, and it's the same time period. And we have, again, with that, it's different because we have this panorama of war, but we focus on two characters and this duel that they continuously have throughout their life. And this one, it just has none of this. So who was it? Shouts out to Toledo because she said she's seen Barely Lyndon. Kubrick's Barely Lyndon, which is a better title for Barry Lyndon. But
it says here that David Scarpa wrote the screenplay. I don't know who that is. Do you guys know who that is?
What else has he written?
Yeah, he's written a bunch of bangers.
Really?
Yeah, and he writes for Ridley Scott often.
Well, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the director who chooses how the vision comes out, and the director can go, this scene's not working. We need to go and sit in the room, and we need the writers to rewrite this scene, and we need a scene doing X, Y, and Z. It is the director. You're right. He is the general. And I saw jokes in the chat, and I actually think that they wrote this character, and it would have made a lot more sense if Napoleon Bonaparte was kind of like just Napoleon, just Kip Dynamite, and like it would make a lot more sense, because the way he talks to women, like, I'm just gonna go and conquer Britain or whatever. It's fine. Like,
I sent Chase a review that I read from was it 2005 and it was a review from the time of Napoleon Dynamite. It was one of the first ones that I put review of Napoleon, and this review of Napoleon Dynamite popped up, and the guy all he wrote was, I just saw Napoleon Dynamite and I just want to punch this fucking guy in the fucking face. I hate him so fucking much. And I wasn't even a bully in school. I just hate every time he talks. The same can apply to this movie.
But it's almost, if you look at it though, think about it. Wasn't Napoleon in this film kind of like Kip, Napoleon's brother in that film?
My sister brought that up. Yeah.
Like I think your sister was one saying in the chat. I think it's true. He actually came off like that, and it's frustrating because when's the next time someone's gonna give a crack at big budget Napoleon film, which I feel like that's an easy thing to make. You could even just show him as a child going through a couple battles, show who he is, show some brilliant autistic strategy scenes of him going, this is how I'm so powerfully autistic. Yes, I will go and win the battle. And it would be a 3 out of 5 stars, and we'd be fine with it.
Yeah, Jesse says he was amazing. Joaquin Phoenix was amazing in The Master. Well, I just covered The Master because I did the films of Paul Thomas Anderson. He was great in The Master because he plays a kind of coyote figure. He's this skinny, skeletal, weird, schizophrenic follower of L. Ron Hubbard. This one, maybe the problem was that he was playing a greater man. I mean, maybe Joaquin Phoenix's problem with the film is that usually he plays characters who are lesser, right? Yeah. They have some sort of void that they're trying to fill. But Napoleon is a much fuller character. It's a giant, robust character. And like you said, I mean, his understanding of a battlefield and his way to win war and the way that he waged war, which according to this professor that I just had Thanksgiving with, he said that after, I think 1809, it was over for Napoleon because what happened was that he had changed battlefield tactics so much that the other places in Europe, first of all, they started to coalesce in this sense of what we now know as nationalism. They didn't have that before. It was all duchies and principalities. Yeah. And so, like, for instance, there's this thing that's like what it means to be Spanish or what it means to be German, right? And so, another point that he brought up was that people think of this is pretty insightful. He said people think of the War of 1812, and the invasion of Russia as being his downfall, because that was a visceral thing where he lost, 400,000 troops on the way back. But it was actually Spain, because he lost as many troops in Spain as he did in Russia, but Russia was 6 months and Spain was over 7 years. So they invaded Spain, and they were fighting against the combined forces of Wellington with the British and the Portuguese and the Spanish, and they ended up occupying Spain for 7 years. But what happened was, instead of having armies so people thought, they talk about Wellington as having as beating Napoleon because he had a professional army, but the understanding of a professional army is a little different, because the professional army in that sense was people who had a lifelong commitment to a military class. But after Napoleon and after the French Revolution gave him the democratization of the officer class. So instead of, this guy said, a bunch of, people with hemophilia and, products of creepy shit in the officer class, right? All these warrior, right? Instead of those guys being promoted, now we've got regular people who are promoted by merit. And that results in militaries having a sense of being a regular person who is being, having a boot put in your face by Napoleon in Spain. And so he can't win against the tide of war because it's too much. It's too many people. So when you look at Waterloo, it's not just Wellington, it's Wellington and the Prussian forces combined. And that only occurs because Napoleon, he screwed up his geopolitical paradigm, because he wasn't able to make use of the politics in the way that he could have if he was more masterful. And Hitler did the same thing. It was complete world domination with no understanding of the other things that were occurring. And that's saying something, because Hitler was very geopolitical, very politically savvy, but in terms of the grand chessboard, it just for some reason he was missing that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they never show any. The only thing they show of that in the movie is just he tries to get peace with Britain and it doesn't work, and he stamps his feet and says, "You think you're so great because you have boats," and then all of a sudden he's going out at war with people, and it doesn't show any of that. And I feel like I sound like a broken record, so I'll stop. But it doesn't show any of this. Yeah. It's so bad.
Yeah,
so the movie is just like not even really about Napoleon. Like
it's about a simp trying to overcome being a simp by acting like a Sigma male, but then still in his heart he's just a simp.
It's about a bunch of NPCs in the background of Tomb Raider in 1999. That's it. I mean, it's like just there's nothing.
It's the fantasy of a socially awkward person with Asperger's thinking that they can conquer the world without any charisma or telling anyone anything. And they just show up and just go, "Can I win the battle now?" And then they win the battle and everyone just cheers them on. And that's the story.
I don't understand how this happened, because Joaquin Phoenix and Ridley Scott are supposed to, they've made great stuff before. How do you take something like Napoleon and make it about nothing? That doesn't even seem possible.
I'll tell you what I think right now, and maybe this is going to be a little bit controversial, but it's the Amish. And people don't want to talk about the Amish, and it's just becoming a problem. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to bring it up.
Gotten kicked off of YouTube for talking about the Amish question. So
they didn't even have Taylor Swift in this movie. Is my problem. They didn't even have they should have had Taylor Swift as Josephine, right? And
Taylor Swift as Josephine, and then even why didn't they just make the guy who played Elvis be Napoleon? That dude's got a bunch of charisma. He's great. Yeah, he's awesome.
So have you ever seen a Napoleon movie where the guy playing Napoleon was good? There is one example.
I don't know if I've ever seen a Napoleon.
Yeah, how many are there?
I think the only movie I've seen with Napoleon was like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
No, but that's good.
Yeah, but he's great in that movie. Napoleon's on point.
That is a great movie because it's satirical. I mean, it's a parody, right, of Napoleon.
But they try to capture his essence.
They do. Like, remember when he goes on the Pastor Randy Ball's Water Country USA water slide, and he's like, "This is great." I mean, that's funny, and that's. But you know what though? Truthfully, that scene on the water slide gets Napoleon better than this does because he's exciting. Right?
Yes,
it's something.
He's passionate,
this-
like you said. He's passionate. He finds something he likes. He goes, "Yes, I'm gonna do this all day. I'm never gonna stop doing this. I feel alive."
Yes. This
Well, that's
this
the
movie.
thing is, like, just from reading, even if they're trying to not talk about his military triumphs and all of that, they're just trying to talk about his sex life, his romance life, which was a total disaster. And there's probably a lot there that you could make a movie out of. And like, you read the letters are insane. So
Yeah.
I'm just like wondering, how do you take a guy who was clearly like, even if he was kind of crazy and kind of evil, like, I don't really know. But even if he was, how do you make him just nobody? How do you just make him a guy that just shows up and just
How do you make him a shell?
doesn't say anything? Yeah.
Well, one thing that they tried to touch on was the fact that his love life, they try to TMZ his love life in this. So one thing that he was constantly up against was British propaganda, and they were very good at this.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there's a scene at the end of the movie where he goes in and he says, "Where are my love letters?" And his daughter says, "Well, they were kept in the cupboard by the bed, but her attendant took them." And he says, "Where are they?" And she says, "Well, she sold them to the British press."
Yes.
So the British press,
Wellington did embarrass him by actually publishing one of those letters. That
Yeah,
actually
so-
happened.
yeah, and the British spy system also was non peril, right? It was fantastic. It
Yeah.
was all encompassing, and their sense of propaganda just through cartoons. They had political
Yep.
cartoons at the time, and they were constantly publishing pictures of Napoleon. And this is where the short thing comes from. And think how devastating that is, because he, like you said, he was a normal height for the time. He was a completely normal guy, and yet the British, by saying this in one, by printing it in one cartoon, we still feel the effects of that now.
Yep.
People still, a Napoleon complex, and that's just
Yeah.
through one cartoon. And Wellington himself is a pretty fascinating guy. I mean, he's funny. First of all, Napoleon also was funny, but Wellington was very funny, and they didn't. Yeah, I think he was addicted to laudanum. And Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington.
Everybody was back then, though.
Yeah. It was
Everybody. It was just, you took that shit if you had a sniffle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, look, you got to go off to war in Russia and you might die and the Cossacks might get you. And they're like, is there going to be opium? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, good. I'm there,
Yeah, I'm
dude.
in.
I don't.
Down.
As long as I'm with the fellas and I'm in a tent, you give me a saber. I get this badass uniform. Who gives a shit, man?
Yeah. I just want to
opium.
point out, I don't really like that somebody just equated Napoleon to Lord Farquaad, because Lord Farquaad was a hero, and the villain Shrek, the inhuman beast, came in and tried to fight the monarchy and uproot it through transhumanism. So no, Lord Farquaad was a hero, and you need to stop perpetuating the lie that he was a villain. Sorry, I just
No,
it
she's
triggers me.
saying. I think she's saying that Wellington was Lord Farquaad because he's played by Rupert Everett in the movie,
Yeah.
and he's
The day is mine.
he comes in and he goes, yes, you thought Napoleon had this accent. Well, I'm Arthur Wellesley, and we need to get rid of this vermin. First of all, I don't remember him ever referring to Napoleon as vermin. I might be wrong, but it doesn't match with how they treat each other as gentlemen later. It was unnecessary. He could have done so many other things in the film. And one thing about Wellington was that he went off. So when Napoleon goes to Egypt, and then later when he mentions that thing about, oh, you have boats, it's like, no. I get it, you're being petulant, but they have the greatest navy in the world, and they dominate the world. And Admiral Nelson destroys you at Trafalgar, and and the fact you have no understanding of that means that later you're going to give away the Louisiana Purchase in order to, get favor with the Americans. Because if during the War of 1812, if the Americans, for example, had if they had gone up and invaded or blockaded Newfoundland, right, or any part of Canada where the British were, then Wellington would have been sent to Canada, and it would have changed the entire fortune of the war. But instead, they didn't do that, and so they have us to thank for that. And then what he does is he goes to Spain, and when he's in Spain, he sees that the Spanish are everybody's poorly organized. The British army is fantastic, and then one of Wellington's, the funniest thing that I read from Wellington, I find this very funny. He said in one of his letters that the funniest thing that he ever heard in his life was when he was reviewing the lines in a battlefield, and a Portuguese general was trying to give a rousing speech to his men, and his rousing speech was, "Remember, men, you are Portuguese." And Wellington burst out laughing. He was like, "What? This is your rousing speech?"
It's hilarious because in the film, the dialogue is so bad that
Yeah.
Wellington's speech at the Battle of Waterslide, which is actually what it's called. Many people think it's Waterloo. It's actually Waterslide after Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The Battle of Waterslide, he's going up down the lines. He goes, "Patience is the name of the game today, boys." And then he goes, "And remember, we cannot give up an inch because what would Britain think?" So, what? What would Britain? You just and when Henley told me that he said the thing about the Portuguese, they literally had a line where he just goes, "We can't die and lose here today, and you can't lose your lives because what would Britain think?" What a terrible line! What a horrible line!
But then they, he was.
It does sound like you guys got punked.
He uses Napoleon, but he uses Napoleon's own tactics against him, right, in that scene. And Napoleon was also a master at artillery. He understood the importance of artillery and softening up the other side, and through an artillery barrage, and he knew exactly where to place his cannons. He was so good. And then Wellington uses against him. And I know that, like a cannonball from the time, if you imagine the set pieces, right, and you're walking across a field, and Napoleon's cannons are pointed at you, and a cannonball is coming for you, it would rip through your chest and through 5 guys behind you and still go 3 feet into a buttress behind. I mean, it's terrifying. It became hand-to-hand combat. They show the hussars and the Cossack. Okay, so the part with Russia I thought was interesting, because when they invade Russia, he does that because Tsar Alexander had made a peace treaty with him and then broken it. So he allied with the English because the French were blockading the English, and they couldn't get any goods to America. They couldn't get goods to France. And the Russians depended on this. So he goes all the way into Moscow, and they take it. But I thought if there was one redeeming piece in this movie, it was probably that, because they showed as soon as they show the Russian landscape, you're like, these guys are fucked. Right.
Yeah.
And they're Cossacks hiding in the woods and the steppe, right? There's guerrilla warfare, and then when they go into Moscow, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That was a cool scene, and they go in and it's empty, and he goes, "Where is everyone?" He starts screaming, looking for everyone, and then he sleeps there that night, which is, you were telling me, not the case. He didn't sleep there, but then he comes out and Moscow's on fire, and he's in panic, and he goes, "Who did this?" He goes, "They did," and he didn't believe it. And he was so mad because he didn't get to go and fight the battle and actually try to have honor. Yeah. And that was a good scene, but it made no sense with the character because you knew nothing about him caring about honor, about glory, about anything. He just did things and clenched his jaw and then slept with Josephine and simped around.
Yeah, he goes to sleep, and then you see flames. Well, he walks in. He busts through the gates into the city, and like you said, it's completely empty. Everything's empty, and he that was the one probably good line in the movie. He says, "Where is everyone? How could there were 300,000 people in the city and they just left?" And I imagine that was that was probably pretty true to life, because he had misunderstood, and he didn't have an understanding of the scorched earth. He didn't understand, and that's crazy for Napoleon, because this is also past his prime. But he didn't understand that, Napoleon was, if there was anything, there's one great thing he was good at. It was understanding the battlefield in terms of topography and weather and climate. Like even Waterloo. I mean, he knew what time the mists would come in. He knew how he could blind his troops, how the enemy would be blinded from them hiding on a flank. And yet he didn't understand this massive landscape. And he walks into the city and it's empty. And then you see flames in the window, and then the city's on fire. And he says to his lieutenants, like, find the man who set this fire. Cause he assumes that his guys set the fire. Not that was kind of weird. Again, they didn't justify that in the film, because you would think that he had strict orders, right, to like that nobody was supposed to do any shenanigans. But the reality was that Napoleon let loose all of the looting and R word and bloodshed that he, it was by design in certain places. He had no
Yeah,
problem
to strike fear into people of he's just this unstoppable force of death.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly had no problem with looting. I mean, one of the reasons he conquered Italy when he did the Italian campaign was to make the new Rome Paris, right? So that he would have all of the great artworks, all the Rubens and all these artworks brought into Paris, and to use to find inspiration in the architecture and to make Paris a new eternal city. But when he goes into Moscow, it's like, what, you think the troops set fire to this thing, and then they say, no, they did it. And he's like, oh, fuck. Right. And then, so then that whole sequence, though, becomes, because you see the Orthodox churches in flames. Right. Yeah. And so, like you were saying, Chase, you watch the movie and you're in pain watching the movie because of this. But at the same time, at this point in the movie, you're like, I want the Russians to destroy this man.
and it's weird because obviously, I'm Orthodox, so I'm like, it's like, let's go. Don't touch the churches. Don't touch Moscow and all this.
But the Russians are willing to understand that they can do these things, and that they still have God's temple in their hearts, and they need to destroy all this stuff so that Napoleon won't get it.
Yeah, and they have their people, and just in the film itself, I was trying to go in there. I wasn't thinking about geopolitics. I wasn't thinking about, the French being, Roman Catholic and all that. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just looking to be entertained by the film and the tone of the film. You do see that, and you're grieved by it because they have these beautiful shots of the set of Moscow, and it is a good shot. Like, it's beautifully, the cinematography of that shot was very well done, and it's beautiful. And then you see it burn down, and you go, okay, like, is he going to go to I was like, try to go to St. Petersburg. Do it. In my head, I go, try. Like, all your men will die. Do it.
Try,
do
motherfucker.
it.
Yeah, see what happens. Yeah.
And if you want in a film and with a character, I think that when you look at all, like, even fiction, nonfiction, anything, when you have, an anti-hero, right? Because no villain thinks they're a villain, right? But you have an anti-hero, you have to have that push and pull where you go, I shouldn't be rooting for this guy, but I am. Here's a good juxtaposition. Another Joaquin Phoenix film, Joker, is a good film. And that one, you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrifying. But yeah, he's being lifted up by the crowd. Like, oh my gosh, I feel for him and I kind of want him to keep going, but it's disturbing that I even want that. You don't get that in this film at all.
Yeah, you don't. Rachel, you've done a lot. I mean, you know a lot about the French Revolution and the Enlightenment and some of the social issues that have come out of that and the way that they affect us now. You just have written a new essay on it. You've written a new paper.
Yes.
If you were to imagine how, how Napoleon comes about, right, and why this is so important, what would you offer to people if they knew nothing about this?
Like, well, geez, that's a big question. Do you mean like the implications of Napoleon specifically in his conquest, or do you mean like the consequences of the Enlightenment?
How did Napoleon lead to e-girls?
Well,
yes.
actually,
I know you can make a connection.
Actually, I probably could.
I'm sure it's accurate too. It's just hilarious.
Well,
the Napoleon to e-girl pipeline.
The Napoleon to e-girl pipeline is real. It's a thing. That should be my next book, actually, now that I think about it. But
from Napoleon to OnlyFans.
Well, it's kind of the problem of like
OnlyFans.
Well, I latched onto the part where you said, this is nation states now, and this was a new thing, right? And this is the time period where we're seeing that transition from like empires and kingdoms to nation states. And this is something that bugs me about nationalism, actually. People now, all the based people online thinking nationalism is the answer when they don't realize there can be a problem there if you're thinking that nation states equal nations. Nations are a people. It's not a state necessarily. Nation states were meant to be like a little stepping stone from kingdoms and monarchies to a global one world government. That was kind of the plan. The plan was we're going to have nation states, and then we're going to transition from that into like the UN ruling everything, that kind of a vision. And then you add the Enlightenment stuff, which is just Luciferian. Essentially, it's just you do you, bro. Like, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, it's like the Michael Malice thing that
just don't take my stuff.
yeah, when Jim Bob does the
you can do whatever you want. Just don't take my stuff.
Don't take my stuff. What's the problem? But these were the ideas of these people. So when you go back and read the writings of everybody during this time period, the influential Enlightenment people, they were fucking horrible. Not only did everybody have an opioid addiction, but everybody had herpes. Guess why? Because everybody was just sleeping with everybody, especially it's funny because the people who were, liberté, equalité, fraternité, running around saying this nonsense, they were kind of just pillaging everything and doing the Luciferian deal with the devil, where it's like, I'm famous, I'm rich, I get to do whatever I want, and then I'm going to like live fast and die young. They didn't care about like the common man. There was none of that. There was no like, oh, we really want the average guy to be able to support his family. And that's what people think it was. And people, like, I remember a long time ago, my friends thinking Napoleon was like this great dude and he did all this awesome stuff, and the Napoleonic Code is great. And, then you think the American Revolution is awesome. You think the French Revolution is awesome until you like grow up and like look back at it and you're like, wait a minute. I'm not so sure that all of this was so fantastic. So, I mean, this idea that we're going to get rid of monarchies and somehow that like this idea that Americans have that the authority is the problem, like it just nobody has authority, things are going to be better, as if that's possible. Number one,
we're pissed off because you raised the tea tax by 1 cent. We need mass bloodshed.
Yeah, exactly.
And look what we have now. So they're mad about a tea tax, and now we pay ungodly amount of more taxes than you ever dreamed of paying under a king, right?
Well, what's funny about the Enlightenment is when you look back, part of what the Enlightenment was is obviously the casting away of all the old order, right? And what did they forget about? What did you cast away? Well, basic knowledge of philosophy and politics from Plato and Aristotle. And you look at Plato's Republic, you go and you read it and you go, yeah, this oligarchy is what we have now. This is exactly what we have. And they threw all of that out the window. And it's interesting because Napoleon going through and, we talked about the Russians burning down Moscow by their own accord, but then also him ransacking Italy. It's interesting because it was not that he was thinking this, but it was the destruction of some of these old order titans of the world and these pillars of the world.
Yeah, it was the beginning of the shifting of that grand chessboard. It was really the first great shakeup in all of that, and like to kind of try to like shrink down the impact of this all happening. It's like it was the New World Order of the time. It was the first Great Reset. It was the first New World Order, and it was the beginning of the end of any sort of stability. It's the whole thing about the Enlightenment, the age of reason, is perpetual revolution. We're just going to be in revolution forever. Like even our founders, like Jefferson said, oh, we're going to have to refresh the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants every so every 200 years, we're going to have a bloody overthrow of the government. Who wants to have a Bolshevik revolution in perpetuity forever? How does that sound like a better life for the common person?
Well, one of Napoleon's things was, that with this revolutionary pedigree, right? And for instance, getting rid of serfdom so he gets rid of serfdom at one end of the spectrum. And then he also, he invites the Pope for his coronation in Paris. And the Pope, like when it says in one of the books that when the Pope got out of his carriage, people saw that they hated the Pope, and then they go, oh, this guy's like, he's kind of acting, he's pretty humble, in this particular instance. And then Napoleon invites him because he said that religion was useful for him and for society. He said society cannot function without religion, which this book makes this one of the books sort of points out that it's Marxian, how it's like proto-Marxian because Napoleon sees religion as the opium of the people. Now opium is the opium of the people, but he sees opium as the opium of the people. And so he uses that to pacify others. Napoleon said that if he had been born in any other region on the globe, he would have been that thing, right? He would have, for instance, he would have rebuilt the third temple. He would have, if he were in Asia, he would have been the Buddhist, Mandarin or whatever. So it's just, he happens to use this. But he had no, he destroyed churches. He had no compunction about the destruction of the social order as long as it was under him. And I think that, to see him as a great man means that the great men in history, especially the great military men, are also figures who destroy large amounts of the population. They leave this swath of bloodshed in their wake. And he's no different than those guys, but he is different in the sense that he really does remake Europe, but not necessarily not for the better, right?
Yeah, and saying great, it just means huge impact.
Yes, he's colossal. And Napoleon. Look, Napoleon was a colossal figure. He was a true colossus. He is a one of a kind person that the 20th century was an entirely that to me was an attempt to emulate Napoleon just over and Hitler tries to do it, Stalin tries to do it, Mao tries to.
So you're saying Napoleon was a great man who talked like this?
They all want to emulate Napoleon's pomp and circumstance and the way that he is able to conquer Europe. But the problem is that one of the things that comes out of that is that it ends up exactly where it began because, prior to Napoleon, you have the monarchy, then they have regicide, then they have the French Revolution, and then they have the emperor, and then it goes back to monarchy, and then the monarchy is destroyed, and then we have the Third Republic, and then we have the Franco-Prussian War, then we have the 20th century, which is a World War I, a complete destruction. And another thing this professor said that was pretty interesting was he said that a continental soldier would have no problem. They would have a complete understanding of World War I in 1914, right? They would understand the tactics completely. But in 1917, they would have no understanding whatever of the battlefield. Everything changed in 3 years. It was completely different. It was totally mechanized, and all the old tactics had gone out the window. So, and that is Napoleon sets that in motion. So, I think that my other question to you, Rachel, was about, basically, the way that, you mentioned this when you were just talking, but I think that when people have a basic understanding of the French Revolution, they think that the poor are downtrodden, right? And the monarchy reigns and everything is pushing down on society. Yeah. And then we have a bunch of people locked up in the Bastille, and then, and then everyone's free, but then there's a bunch of bloodshed, but it's just because they don't do it right. Right. So where are they wrong? What are we missing?
Well, it's the same thing that I keep finding over and over and over when I really dig into any of these big revolutions. Anytime you have a big revolution, the mainstream, and I don't know if this is a product of like Americanism or us just being in the West in general, but there's always this mainstream idea that revolution is always and has to be a product of grassroots uprising against tyranny. That everybody thinks that there was some tyrannical ruler who was, like you said, pressing down, just oppressing the country and making things just so unbearable that the peasants had no other option but to rise up and fight it. And that's actually not what ever happened. It's almost always a little group of shitty, like jerk intellectuals who are usually perverts. They're usually perverts, and they sit around in their salons and their little talking circles and whatever, and they like to talk philosophy. But what they always want to do is imagine some utopian bullshit vision that they don't care if everyone dies in pursuit of this thing, whether it's Marxist, whether it's Enlightenment. It doesn't really matter like what flavor of revolution you want to pick. it's always like a little group of intellectuals, and they write some pamphlets and some speeches, and they always have the ear of the press. They always have, access to they have
Well,
the arm
these
of
revolutions,
propaganda.
isn't it like 10% or something of the populations that actually participate in them?
It's usually like less than 10%.
It's like 7 or 8 is a
Yeah,
number I've heard. I
yeah.
don't know. Okay.
It's
Yep.
a tiny, and everybody else is just like completely caught unawares, caught in the crossfire, and then everybody gets swept in because
Yep.
you do have there's a reason this stuff didn't happen this way until the printing press, until mass communications came along, because you didn't have a way to create this like super widespread propaganda. There was propaganda before mass communications, but it just wasn't as effective. Whereas like you guys were talking about the cartoons and the propaganda that the British were so good at. I wrote a Substack piece about patterns in propaganda during wartime, and I use a bunch of those cartoons. We probably wouldn't have had World War I, World War II. Probably a lot of these mass conflicts would have never happened were it not for that, because all they do is come out and say, oh, this Bismarck, like the Bismarck of Germany, is putting babies on bayonets, and they convince the public.
Yep.
The mothers get upset, everybody gets outraged. Or the Naira testimony is the same kind of thing. They put somebody in front of a camera and they start crying about an atrocity that we later find out is bullshit. So they always use it's a small group of intellectuals who want radical change, mainly because they're bored. Like, to be perfectly honest, what I think it always comes down to at the end is like these highfalutin people with nothing to do going, wouldn't it be better if things were different? Why would it be better if things were different? I just want it to be different. I'm just bored. I think it would be better if we did it like this. And so they'll pontificate about what yes, shall we do opium and spread herpes? I think we shall. And then we'll write a pamphlet and some propaganda.
You know, it's interesting that I just realized, because I'm bad with geopolitical history. I'm not knowledgeable about it. I focus mostly on like, philosophy and like church apologetic stuff and those dates in history. But Hegel and Napoleon were born like a year apart. And Hegel lived about 10 years after Napoleon, like 15 years after Napoleon. And it's interesting because I'm sure like if you go and found something, I'm sure he talks about Hegel pushing forward and, the collapsing of these dialectics of monarchy and democracy and monarchy and republic. And after the clearing of, this new world and Napoleon conquering this and causing, all of those machinations to start coalescing together, like you said, those ideas start permeating everywhere, all this Hegelian dialectics. And it's interesting looking at that.
Yeah.
Napoleon also predicted the euro. He wanted one banking system. He wanted one note for all of Europe as part of his continental system. And
he also brought up Big Nine.
He did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, okay. So the most interesting thing for me about Napoleon that is obviously left out of the movie is, I mean, there's a lot of checkerboard floors and all this stuff, but the portraits, always have the hidden hand. And I read a Masonic thing from a Mason about how Napoleon was initiated into one of the orders. Rachel, you probably know about this. He was initiated into one of the orders when he conquered Egypt. So I do know that he after the battle in Egypt, he spent the night in the king's chamber, and when he walked out the next morning, one of his lieutenants said, "What, because Napoleon was, had Chaz Manson eyes. He was like, there was Gleep Globble in there." And one of the guys said, "What did you see?" And he said, "If I told you, you wouldn't believe it." And I think that that was because he was initiated that night in the pyramid, in the king's chamber, which is the only, which is the only account that I know of him doing that. Because the rest of his system is like a Masonic apotheosis, right? In terms of his, in terms of his conquering of the rest of Europe. Not to say that the enemies weren't also. I mean, I don't know if Wellington was a Mason. I think that certainly a bunch of the other people that he was at war with were. But I think that there's, like you were saying, with dialectics and with his sort of geopolitical notions of a new world, it certainly sort of ties it, especially one where there's a freedom of worship in France and in the continental system, which doesn't mean anything to Napoleon except a power base and a power structure. I mean, one of the things that it also says in all these books, again, is that the rural people were unaffected by this in a number of ways, especially in France. They, whereas when you went to Paris, a city of like a few 100,000 people, there's just a massive, massive amount of bloodshed that occurs. But even then, people are still sort of unaffected by it. And I think that you were talking about the oligarchy. It's interesting that they get rid of the monarchy and any kind of oligarchical system that they had tied in with the monarchy. And then they immediately set up a new oligarchy, right?
Yep.
In terms of the Committee for Public Safety headed by Robespierre, which is just a system of who are going to be their first warriors, all the snitches and all the people that have no power that are going to have problems with their neighbors. Oh, Francois next door, said this or didn't put up this flag or didn't, do this. They immediately get guillotined, right? And then, of course, that turns on Robespierre at the end.
Well, it's fascinating.
Oh,
sorry, Rachel.
It's
yes, you can
interesting.
keep
It's
going.
fascinating, aren't we? Apparently,
Yes, Rachel, it's quite fascinating. Continue.
Quite.
This is scintillating.
This is
Yes.
interesting.
That was much jouissance, right?
Yes. Yes.
I was just gonna say, Josephine's first husband was guillotined. So she was actually arrested during the French Revolution because her husband was involved, and she didn't like him anyway. She'd already been cheating on him. And it's speculated there's a good case to be made that she also went and had herself an abortion at a certain point because she was already having affairs and things like that before.
Yeah, she was a hoe.
She really was a serious 304 from back in the day.
Yeah.
But she got arrested with her husband. He ends up getting guillotined. Do you know how she got out of it? Take a guess. How do you think she avoided?
She had a child. She got pregnant, is what she says in the movie.
Yes. Well, that's because she was sleeping with all of the guys who were running the French Revolution. The guys that were jailing her, she slept with them all.
Yeah, she says in the movie. She says in the movie, in another one of the disjointed scenes in this fucking movie. Oh my
gosh, this is such a bad scene.
She says, "Oh, there's something you should know about me. I was jailed during the French Revolution, and I got pregnant to get out of it. This
and then she goes,
who I am. I am a hoe."
And then remember what she asks him?
What'd she say?
She's like, does my past disturb you? And then he looks back at her. No. Will it concern you in the future that I've slept with men to keep myself alive? No.
Wow.
That's literally the scene.
Great.
That's the scene. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. I feel like
meanwhile. Oh, and then he comes back and she says, "Did you sleep with anyone?" And he says, "Oh yes, I slept with lots of people." And you're like, "I don't believe you." As Jesse Ventura voice, "I don't believe you."
Yeah, and in the scene, me and Henley were talking about this last night.
Who?
I thought that.
Where are the women?
Where are the women? And she just accepts it, and she's like, "Were they pretty?" And I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. He's going to lie to hold on to his wounded pride and lie about having an affair, and he just goes, "Yeah, some of them were pretty." Yeah,
the only charismatic woman in the movie was Marie Joseph, right? Who was the daughter? Was she the daughter of the Austrian? Yeah, and so he divorces Josephine, and then the guy says, "Well, my 19-year-old sister or something like that, she might be interested." And then she shows up. Damn, she was interested, right? This girl. So Napoleon walks up to her and he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." And you're like, "Oh, damn." She was the only one. She was the only one.
And it was actually, she actually had some charisma, and she you could tell she was like excited to be in the movie. Yeah. And then she disappeared. She's not in the rest of the film.
Damn, I'm in this movie. Yeah.
You're like, don't get so excited. Don't
get too excited. You're going to be in it for 5 seconds. But I think that's actually pretty true to life, because I know that Marie was not. Nobody cared about Marie after he'd been married to Josephine. They only, they were obsessed with Josephine in a TMZ way. Yeah. But she was like never on the, they didn't care about her.
Josephine was like the Jada Pinkett Smith of her time.
Yeah,
she was so awful. People were enamored with her because she was so awful. She spent ridiculous, like she was renowned and famous for running up debt. buying fancy shit.
keep my wife's face off of your French epaulets, bitch.
Yeah.
Right? He
Yeah.
slaps Talleyrand.
And he didn't want to divorce her, but he kind of had to because he had to produce an heir and she couldn't have babies, which could be because she was riddled with STDs or because she may have had some abortions. We don't know. She was also a little bit past the wall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could have been any combination of these things. Could have also been that she wasn't too fond of sleeping with the guy and slept with everyone else instead. But he figured out it had to be her because he got other women pregnant and she was having affairs and nobody else got her pregnant. So
there's a creepy scene in the film where Napoleon's mother comes in. They don't make it clear that it's his mother, but his mother comes in and says, we need to figure out who this is, who is the problem. So I have a hoe down the hallway. You will sleep with her. And if it works, and then he immediately gets her pregnant, right?
Okay.
So they know it's
Can
her.
I have another drink? Can I have another drink?
Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
He just goes. She says that, and I think she did have did she have an accent? I think she did.
Yeah, and then
I think she did, but anyway, yeah.
And then he just sips of sherry. Yeah.
Can I have another drink? Yeah. Takes another drink and knocks the girl up, and then later, it's so weird because they don't know what they want to do with this character, and I'm mad too. Like, I'm mad about this film. So is Henley. We're very annoyed by this film. At one point, he's talking to the Russian Tsar Alexander. He goes, okay, you want to marry, like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, my daughter's like, or what about your sister? Oh, well, she's 15. That's just a detail.
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck do you mean?
He's like,
what do you mean?
That's just a detail.
What do you mean? Like, are you a creep? What does this even mean in the context of this?
Were they just like, we're gonna invent a character that nobody can like know anything about, or that doesn't have any character, a character with no characteristics?
Things just happen.
Like,
Yep.
It is post-modern. How he is nothing. Right? It's just nothing.
This film is like the film representation of when you go to an art museum and you go to the contemporary art section and you see a swath of blue, and it's selling for $45,000.
Yeah,
that's what this film is.
Yeah, and in the meantime, like, there's that famous painting of Napoleon on horseback by Delacroix, right? And it's like this guy wrapped and swaddled in this red sash, and he's got and he was in battles. I mean, he was on horseback, and which that alone is pretty wild. The fact that the last English king killed in battle was Richard III. This is way after that. Napoleon it's like, are they trying to make him into a Richard III type of character, but without a physical deformity? Talleyrand, they could have done that with Talleyrand, because Talleyrand is one of the great, by great, I mean, he's one of the great, like, Machiavellian, geopolitical strategists. He's the sort of power behind Napoleon, and they show that with his leg brace. But he was the books make clear that Talleyrand was a disgusting human being. He smelled bad. He was vile. He would walk in a room and people would be disgusted by him because he's just this kind of ghoul. But he's totally Machiavellian. Another character that they leave out that they could have made use of was Fouché, Fouché, who was Napoleon's spy master. And they show him twice in the movie. They mentioned his name one time, and this guy was the archetype that was emulated by Himmler and Beria, Stalin's Beria. Yeah. I mean, this guy, he spent all of his time. One of the books says that Talleyrand would fight, would want people fought in pitched battles, right, to win power, and Fouché would want to just kill spies in secret, in the dark, in secret alleyways. He had files on everybody. He killed tons of people. He was the sort of power. And by the way, Fouché went on to be the second richest man in France. And Talleyrand, after Napoleon, he survived Napoleon. Talleyrand, either it was Talleyrand or Fouché that went on to be a consultant for the Tsar. He was hired by so he was completely, so that's very postmodern, very 21st century, or 20th, 21st century. These people are without national boundaries. They're without allegiances. They're just power hungry.
Yeah, well, this is another thing I was going to bring up is that about the Enlightenment stuff is these people were already internationalist. This is what I was trying to
Yeah.
kind of get around to with the nationalist thing. People don't understand these people were not nationalists. They would pay lip service to like the French nationalism or the British or American nationalism. They were almost all internationalists from the get-go, just like the Bolsheviks were. People like even to this day, dumb people like Infrahas will think that like Bolsheviks were like Russian nationals. I'm like, no, they were
Yeah.
unabashed internationalists. They only cared about Russia insofar as we're going to use Russia to defeat capitalism so we can have an internationalist one world order. That's all. They didn't
They're
care
strict
about Russia.
globalists. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they were horrible, horrible, horrible. I've been doing 2 years of research on them because I'm doing a huge, ridiculous book. I don't know why I did this to myself about some of the women, the Marxist feminist women, and how they did like equally horrific, if not worse, things than the liberal feminists that we had here in the West. But like, for instance, a lot of the ideas that these people had around this time sound like the stuff we're dealing with right now, which is why I wrote this paper that we were talking about earlier. Mary Wollstonecraft, who was friends with most of the French revolutionaries. She was a huge supporter of the French Revolution. She was in France for large parts of it. Yes, she was British. What the fuck was she doing in France supporting the French Revolution? Because she was friends with all these intellectuals and she wanted to make a name for herself. And they wanted a woman they could push to the front. It wasn't that she was actually brilliant or fantastic. She was okay. But these people taught her things and kind of put ideas in her head to make her the mouthpiece because women's liberation stuff was baked into this cake right from the very beginning. And she would talk about how she believed that the soul was sexless. So again, she's supposed to be Christian. She's supposed to be like Anglican or something. And she would talk about Platonist ideas like sexless souls or even Pythagorean stuff like that the soul doesn't have a gender and that we need to get
Very
back
Renaissance.
to this pre-Edenic state where like there is no male and female, there is no man, no woman. We all have the same soul, we all have the same mind, and all this kind of crap. So these same ideas that are like crazy elites that we're dealing with right now have these people at this time had. And there's for some reason there's this idea in everyone's mind that these things started out good, right? The French Revolution started out good. The American Revolution started out good. The feminist revolution started off. All these things started with good intentions. And they were born of good things and good ideas.
And the intentions people said publicly were their actual intentions.
Right. Yes. But just the same way that Joe Biden goes up now and gives a speech talking about how much he cares about the people and he wants to help the working class and social justice. He says all that, but all of us living in this time period now and know who this guy is, we know that that's bullshit, right? We know there's...
We're going to help the working class. Listen, Jack.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because you say that, and in my head, it kind of harkens back to, that mentality of you saying like, oh, this androgynous, genderless soul and stuff, and this whole destruction of metaphysics in people's lives of having things that are actually different ontologically. Kind of makes me think that this whole film, maybe Ridley Scott was trying to transcend film and saying, I'm not going to make a film that is good and it's going to be so bland you can't call it bad, so you'll be confused. Because that's
he was not. He didn't even get to that level. He just had a hunk of shit and he made it into a fucking bullshit film. He did not. Don't even try. Don't even try.
No, it's
to
meta.
Say that he had
meta.
some sort of meta level. All right, because
it's meta level bad filmmaking, dude.
No,
I think
no,
we're just not.
Way. There's no way.
He's gonna come out like in years. He's gonna say on his deathbed. He's gonna say, "Look, this was a performance piece to show you the dark side of Hollywood's lack of ideas, and this was actually a meta play on it."
If he did that, if he said, "I was trying to emulate, Marquis de Sade." And this is the experimental avant-garde version of the Marat Sade, right? Then that would be something, right? Yeah. That would be something. but there's no way. There's no way, man.
I want to tell everybody a little. So BLA texted me earlier and he said, I'm going live tonight to tear apart this piece of shit Napoleon movie. It's awful. It fucking sucks. And he's like, you can come by if you want. You can join in if you want.
Look, just to put that in context, I mean, have I done that like with any other? I don't think I've done that with any other film that I've covered. I'm usually very generous in the films and the artworks that I mean,
you'll be like,
books,
but I think they had a point here, and
you'll try to find the art
totally
in it.
Translate, but
yeah.
He's never just like it sucks.
No,
in terms of literature, I only cover works either in the canon or that have a significant merit, right? Where it's truth, beauty, goodness. We're elevating the human soul, or not, but there's a purpose behind it because it's inverted. But with films, I've been pretty selective in the films that I've covered, and this one is such a disappointment. I just couldn't believe how disappointing this movie
you guys,
is.
He even pretends my writing is good, so he's very generous.
Yeah.
He's very sweet.
It's honestly, I feel personally attacked by the low quality of the film. I feel like it's that scene in, I feel like I'm in that scene in Billy Madison, where Billy Madison answers the question about the Industrial Revolution. The guy goes, nothing that you just said even resembles a coherent thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having for having watched this movie. You're awarded no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah.
That's what Ridley Scott needs to hear right now.
Yes. So one of the things that the great writers of the time, because there was a dearth of work that came, artistic work that came out of the Napoleonic era in France. There weren't many novels written. There were, none of the great poets came out. It was later that they came about. At the time in England, they were experiencing the height of the Romantic era. And one thing is that all five of the great Romantic poets they knew who Napoleon was, and they looked into his work, and they saw him as the kind of archetype of this, utopian world that they wanted. Coleridge went off and founded a utopian colony. He was inspired to write Kubla Khan because of Napoleon's Egyptian campaign. But they all, to a man, well, four of them turned back on what they saw as Napoleon's merits, and Byron was the only one who held firm with his admiration of Napoleon. Byron had a bust of, because they were younger also. Keats, Shelley, and Byron were younger, and they were all kids when Napoleon was conquering Europe. But Byron had a bust of Napoleon in his dorm room at Harrow, but see, the reason for that is that Byron has the Byronic hero. So we see the birth of the anti-hero, and we see a kind of Miltonian Satan character in Napoleon, and that's what he makes out of Napoleon. And in fact, Napoleon's one of his quotes that Napoleon said. He said, "I have sealed the chasm of anarchy, and I have unraveled chaos." I mean, that
sounds like someone with charisma.
Yeah, that sounds like a real character.
That sounds like a character.
Is
there a plot that goes along with that?
Right. And so Byron says that when Napoleon came back off of Elba for the 100 days and went back to reconquer Europe, this was the Miltonian Satan climbing back out of the abyss, right, to try and reconquer paradise, which is charisma. I mean, yes, we see a Luciferian, character in this, a totally destructive personality, but it's someone who's charismatic, right? It's someone that people have feelings about, and that it's interesting. Even when Napoleon went to Elba, he spent his time on Elba. He didn't just sit on the fucking rock like they have it in the movie. He's sitting on a rock because he's on the rock of Elba, and he's looking at a ship, and he's like eating dates, and he's like, I've decided to go back to Europe. That's not what he did when he was on Elba. He completely revitalized their economy. He changed all the social orders and structures on Elba. He made use of his time constantly. And then finally, when he's sent off to, St. Helena would be the kind of, would be the sort of Luciferian, hell version for Napoleon. They send him off to an absolute rock in the middle of the ocean off the coast. It's the most remote island in the world. But even then, there's a good movie. The great movies about Napoleon, there's an actor, Ian Holm. He died a few years ago. He's the one who plays the bad guy in From Hell. and he played Napoleon 3 times, including in Time Bandits. They do a good version of him in the Count of Monte Cristo. All they have is the Count of Monte Cristo going, ascending this rock, and Napoleon is standing there on the precipice with his greatcoat on, but he looks like a statue. He's statuesque, right? The French, after Napoleon was gone, the French put the statue of Napoleon on top of the Arc de Triomphe, right? The sarcophagus. Napoleon, when they reinterred him in the sarcophagus, if you've ever been to Paris, it's the most ridiculous thing. His sarcophagus is the size of an Anunnaki. It's huge in this rotunda. I mean, he's this monumental, colossal, huge figure in history. And the way he dies in the movie, he's sitting there talking.
Oh my God.
This is fucking unbelievable that they did this. He's on St. Helena, and he's talking to these 2 girls who are sword fighting. And you can clearly see, by the way, that the girls are sword fighting because of Napoleon's influence. Like, people were interested in that. In the rest of the 19th century, kids wore Napoleonic hats. They liked it. It was like playing cowboys and Indians, but it was Napoleon. They were obsessed with Napoleon. So these 2 girls are like fake sword fighting with sticks. And he does have an attempted funny quip there. He says, like, did you know that I conquered Russia or something like that? And they're like, no, you didn't. You lost. And he says, who told you that? And it was kind of funny. It's like, oh, did this guy, was he good with children? Is he funny? And then he's sitting there and we see him from behind, and he
throws some dates at them. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he just collapses. He slow-mo collapses to the side.
And then the screen goes black.
So in other words, the guy was just there and then he just died, right? It's fucking utter bullshit. Like,
he's there and then he wasn't. A thing happened. That's filmmaking.
So the scene in Waterloo where he goes back into the tent and he's kind of hunched over, they could have made use of that because Napoleon had attempted, he had ordered a vial of poison made in case he needed to use it, right? Like cyanide with the Nazis. And so later I think it was when he, for the abdication, like he drank the poison and but it had lost its potency, so it just ended up wrecking his insides. So his stomach was in a horrible condition at Waterloo, and they could have showed that as one of the factors that contributed to his defeat, but they didn't show that. And then on St. Helena, it's suspected, there's no proof, but it's suspected that he was poisoned, right? It was a slow mercury poisoning, either by his British attendant. I don't know why the British state would feel the need to do this because they'd already exiled him, but either his attendant or somebody. And then they think that he may have been pushed to his death off of a rock. So there's just none of that. He just collapses and dies for no reason. He's 52 years old.
It's almost in the film because of the way they set up the rest of the film. I think what they were going for was that he died because of the lack of fawning and recognition of his attempted greatness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the whole film, he's a petulant child in the film. And again, we've gone all over this all stream that no, he was great in the sense of he was a towering figure of history. Not that he was a good man, but he is a towering figure over history and changed the world. And I think that it's supposed to be that he died because, you know who burned down Moscow? And they go, the Russians did. And he goes, no, I did it. No, you didn't. He goes, who told you that? And then he just dies almost as if because of the rejection. And it's so pathetic. It's such a bad film on every level. And I'm personally offended. I don't think therapy is helpful. I think people should go to a priest. I'm going to check out that therapy app. I'm going to check it out. I need to talk about this more and I need to process what I didn't feel. It's like they made a film and they said, okay, what do you want to color grade it as? And Ridley Scott went, is there a color it's not white, it's not black, but it's nothing?
Yeah.
That's what this is.
I mean, Goethe wrote about Napoleon. He said, what centuries have dimly meditated his mind surveys in brightest clarity. All that is pretty has evaporated. Here nothing is of weight save earth and sea. Byron wrote about how the fall of Napoleon is like the greatest fall of a human being ever, right? He's not the greatest, not the fall, but in terms of essentially a modern figure, he goes from the top of the world to being exiled to nothingness, right?
Yeah.
And yet they just there's none of that. I don't know. It's
What's
pretty
okay? What are
wild.
the good Napoleon films? Because I need to see a good Napoleon film. I'm
You know what?
hurt
The best
right now.
Napoleonic film is Master and Commander with Russell Crowe, and it doesn't show Napoleon, but it's probably the best Napoleonic film because they're at war with the French Navy. The whole point of the movie is that they're circumnavigating the globe trying to destroy the French Navy, and Napoleon plays a a kind of shadow figure that looms over the globe in that. I mean,
He's just
that's
mentioned in fear and trembling.
yeah, and because Russell Crowe is one of the his kind of mentor was Lord Nelson, right? And out of Napoleon we get the twin pillars of the great British military at the time, which is Wellington and Nelson. And Nelson defeats him at Trafalgar. It's a blow that he can never recover from. And Nelson, he gives his life for this. He dies. And in that film, by the way, Master and Commander, no women in the film, right? There are 0 women in the film.
Based.
And that movie is one for the boys.
Ugh.
That movie is so fucking good.
So you're
start to
telling me that
finish.
there wasn't women pirates back then? You're really gonna make me think that?
Excuse me,
so
but there were
good.
women making the sword or something, and they did the math. They drew the math. Actually,
Bill and Ted's
did you
Excellent
guys?
Adventure.
I just want everybody watching this to know that when we went to the moon, and we totally did.
Oh, absolutely.
It was.
Are they playing golf? Are they playing golf out there? They've got a fucking dune buggy. They're playing golf out there.
Yeah, and it was all made possible by women of color who did the math by hand and got it all right on the first try. I just want everybody to know that.
That's correct. Moving on. No. Okay, Master and Commander, right?
Yeah, Master and Commander.
What about actually one with Napoleon?
Ian Holm plays Napoleon in Time Bandit. I think it's Time Bandits.
Well, but that's like a silly sci-fi movie.
Yeah, but it's not silly. It's not. I mean, it's good. It's a good movie.
Is there any movie
silly,
about Napoleon himself, like as the main, and it's supposed to be about him? Because this is what I'm pissed about. Hollywood, when this bombs,
Waterloo. I think it's 1970. Waterloo.
It's called Waterloo.
Yeah,
because
decent.
We wouldn't care. I don't think me and Henley would be passionate about this if we didn't know that because this bombed, there's not going to be another Napoleon film for 20, 30 years. And they're going to look back and go, well, the studio heads are going to go, well, that one bombed. And so people aren't going to try to make a good film, which would have been so easy.
And he's too easy. Joaquin Phoenix was too old. He was too old for the fucking movie also.
Hire Elvis. Hire the kid that played Elvis.
Yeah.
I just Googled it and I was like, why does he look so old?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he has no... You needed a more cerebral actor. You needed somebody with the key to making movies, the key to having an actor in a movie, especially if it's someone said, is it casting? Well, the casting department isn't casting Joaquin Phoenix. He's the guy who just won an Oscar and they want him to star in the movie.
Yeah.
Right. And I watched an interview with Ridley Scott and Joaquin Phoenix, and he says in the interview, I saw this before and now it makes sense. He said, did you get tired? Did you get tired of my antics on set or the way that I am? And Ridley Scott was, well, you did them. And so basically, was this Joaquin Phoenix showing up to set again and being like, I have great ideas. Look, man, this is like Quincy Jones with Michael Jackson in recording Thriller. When in that interview where they said, does Michael, what are Michael's songs like? And Quincy Jones is like, songs.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson's songs. Let me make one thing clear here. I'm a producer. I produce music. I don't give a fuck what the artist writes. I don't care about what songs they bring to me. If I want to record their song, it's because I found it. I'm making great art. I don't care about their feelings. And say what you will about that. I think that there's a truth to that, especially in terms of, which is interesting because in a meta version, in a sort of ironic fashion, that is the autocratic dictator of art. Right, who has a Napoleonic way of looking at an artwork that he's producing, and this was the French Revolution version of a movie, and there are good movies about the French Revolution. I mean, look, Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette is a far superior movie. It's not exactly it's about the time preceding this. It's about Marie Antoinette in Versailles.
Yeah. Is that the one with my ex?
It's a yes, with Kirsten Dunst and Tom Hardy's in it, and a bunch of people are in it, and it's fantastic because it knows what it's about, right? It's an aesthetic, it's a pretty movie, it's aesthetic, it's a kind of a hipster version, but they get the costumes right, they get the food right, they get the sort of the lackadaisical atmosphere, of the royalty at the time. If there's one thing that the books about Napoleon make clear, it's that the thing that he suffered from the most was Weltschmerz, right? He had a world weariness. He was melancholy. In his times when he was melancholy, it was an all-encompassing melancholy in the way that Alexander makes that. We read that statement from Alexander.
And
right?
was that because he was outside of warfare?
It's because Alexander wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. It's because Napoleon realizes that he's the master of Western Europe, right? He can do anything he wants, but he's melancholy because for one, no one understands him at the time, right? Few people did. I mean, von Clausewitz understood him and took his tactics,
Well, when you talk like this, it's hard to understand you.
Yeah, but he has no, his attempts at love with Josephine were probably heartfelt, an attempt at a human relationship to have an heir. But even the part in the movie where he says, "I took one for the team. France is more important, right, than my feelings for you." You go, I don't
Since
believe
when?
you. Yeah,
Since
I don't
when?
believe you. I mean, that's the same thing that Hitler said, right, about while he wasn't going to be married because he was married to Germany. It's the same thing that Elizabeth I said, but we don't believe that in this movie.
Yep. No.
So,
no, and that's the thing. It's like with the Sofia Coppola film of Marie Antoinette, what that had was an actual vision. And when I said that joke about them, it's like he went to someone goes, "Okay, what color grading do you want to do on this film?" He goes, "Well, I don't want white. I don't want black. Do we have something that's bland or just no color?" There was no heart. There's nothing in this film. And I think something that BLA does a great job of doing, and Rachel brought it up before, is that when he does his streams on films, even if he doesn't care about it, he tries to find the heart in it, the universal human themes within whatever piece of art that it is. There's nothing here. This is an empty, vapid exercise that just got greenlit to greenlight it.
Yeah, a contrast to this is you guys remember the scene there are a couple scenes in Gladiator. So Gladiator was a sleeper hit. It became a hit. It was supposed to be nothing at the time.
So good.
And it resulted in the sword and sandals epics that overtook the rest of the 2000s. And by the way, Ridley Scott capitalizes on that with Kingdom of Heaven that I just covered. I mean, fantastic movie.
That was a great movie.
So
Wait,
underrated.
the one with Orlando Bloom?
Yeah, it's very good.
I got to rewatch it. I
good
watched
movie.
it as a kid and I fell asleep, but I was 12, so
And,
or like
and that
13
movie
or
is
something.
Yeah, that movie's guided by Baldwin, played by who's the leper king, the king of this guy's the king of Jerusalem, right? It's the only successful crusade, and it's Edward Norton behind a leper mask, and he makes this speech where he says, just to paraphrase, he says, when you die and you reach the throne of God, you will have to answer for what you've done. It will not be convenient to say that in this instance, I didn't have virtue, or that thus and thus was the reason. These will not suffice. That speech fucking rules, dude. That is so good. The scene
That's
in
heart.
Black Rain that I just covered, where the sensei says to him, he says to Michael Douglas, this guy's a Yakuza, and he says, when I was 10 years old, we were forced underground. And when I came back, the city was gone. There was black rain. You brought black rain, and then you forced your values down our throat. That line, that speech alone is one paragraph, and it is better than the entire Oppenheimer movie. It is so well done because we have broken heroes who are searching for something. They want to redeem themselves. And how human is that? We're all flawed. We live in a fallen world where we do these shitty things, and sometimes they have huge, long-lasting results, but we want to redeem ourselves with honor. And Gladiator is about that, right? It's a character who's in search of honor. There's a scene where, you remember the scene where he's like praying to the idols, right? And look, I mean, the guy's a Roman.
Well, he's praying for his kid. He's praying for his kids. Yeah,
he is. He's praying for his kid, and he imagines heaven. He imagines Elysium, and he sees his kid and his wife there, right? And there's just that professor tonight. He told me about a letter that he'd read from a soldier during the Napoleonic era who was imagining his wife. Right, he was writing a letter to his wife, and he was imagining that he was back with her. And he said that is the essence of the soldier. That's
Yep.
everything that the soldier is fighting for, and that's hard. That's there's something to fight for. The landscape scenes or the cityscape scenes in Gladiator were fantastic because they have that same color palette. We zoom in on Rome and we see Rome alive, and we never really seen it like that in a movie before. We see Rome alive. We see the Circus Maximus, and the Circus Maximus isn't covered in fucking dog track and garbage like it is now in Rome. It's alive, right? The Colosseum is full, and yet we could see that with Paris, and they attempt that with Paris in the movie, but it doesn't work. It should be bright. It should be brighter and vivid.
Did they even show Paris? I just remember like barely showing it, and it's just them, like in the scene where they go for the coup, and he's a part of the coup, and they show like the streets for a second. But again, yeah, there's no life. There's none of that universal like the thing about soldiers that you talked about, where they're remembering and putting it in their hearts. This is why I'm doing this, is for my wife, my daughter, or my friends, or my parents, or my cousins, or whatever it is. And that's a universal thing that everyone, whether you're in war, physically in a horrible place, which obviously war is always a tragedy, but it's a fact of life, you will try to find that in yourself to keep going. They have none of that here. They don't show Paris. They have no universal themes. The movie The Three Ninjas has way more heart than this. I would rather watch The Three Ninjas and watch them, cartoonily beating up, people anytime over this. And it's sad. I think that's what makes me angry, is that art is all you have to do for me to enjoy your art. Not that you need me to enjoy it, is there. I have to understand the heart behind it and feel it. That's it. I don't care for metal music. I can hear a metal song, and if it's got heart, I can respect it. There's heart there. Any film,
the characters have to believe in something, and even if they don't believe in anything, then they are believing in nothing, Lebowski, right? And that is something, right? Ralph Waldo Emerson said that Napoleon was the apogee of the self-made man, right? Which is not really actually even true. Because it was of noble birth, but he did do these things. And so if you're going to make a movie like that, show that this guy is the Superman, right? He's the 19th century Nietzschean, through force of will Superman. But he has no force of will in this.
Yeah.
He's just
imagine making a movie
dude.
about Napoleon and it just turned out to be a nothing burger. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you guys, thank you so much for having me on for a minute, but I am being summoned by the children because we have a tradition every year of they like to put up the Christmas tree and watch a Christmas movie after Thanksgiving dinner. Don't come for me, okay? The children invented the tradition, so we just do the tradition. So I'm being summoned.
Well, we'll have a good Thanksgiving, Rachel. Tell them I say hello.
I will.
And I hope everyone else, I'm not leaving or anything, but again, I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving. I got to hang out with some friends. I don't have family where I'm at, and it was, it's a blessing to be able to hang out with friends. And thank God we're not in warfare in the United States. Pray that doesn't happen. And there's places that there are warfare. And remember, if you see the movie Napoleon, you're meant to have a heart. You're meant to have a soul. Joaquin Phoenix in this film does not have it.
He's just a
Happy
homunculus
Thanksgiving.
Napoleon.
Yeah, happy Turkey Day. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I will see you guys later.
Peace.
See you, Rachel. Real quick, I just gotta say, Rachel had a great music video, but BLA has one of the greatest channels of all time. Okay, and if you want to support him, you can support via Streamlabs, Venmo, Cash App, all the links. He has one of the greatest channels of all time. All right, I'm gonna stop talking now. Okay.
Listen, did you do what I did at Thanksgiving? Did you bring up the Phoenix program, human animal chimeras, spider guts gestating in U.S. research farms under UT Austin in
The
biological
table gets
labs.
set. The table gets set, and it's like, all right, guys, dig in, and you go, MK Ultra, 9/11.
No, I'm not kidding.
AI, moon landing.
I'm not kidding. I'm not joking when I say that is literally me. Thanksgiving today, I busted in the door. I busted in the front door, and they said, "Hey, happy Thanksgiving!" And I said, "It's your fault, globalists. It's Subproject 119. Where were you with MK Naomi, MK Often? It's your fault that arachnids and spider guts are being spliced. There's never been a combination between an arachnid and a rhesus monkey. All right, we are living in a globalist takeover."
I saw a hilarious
look, sir, this is a home. And I said, the Phoenix program was under you at Quantico.
Sir, this is a Wendy's. I saw the funniest meme, and it was like a woman on the left side of the meme. And it goes the wife like preparing for Thanksgiving. She looks all sweet, like cooking, and then the husband preparing it, and he's he's got a war helmet on, and he's putting on like face paint, and then it's saying like, you know, like just going through listing a bunch of conspiracy theories. And he's going to talk about
Napoleon was great. You think Napoleon was great? What about the tunnels? Show me the tunnels.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean,
shouts out to Pim real quick. Happy Thanksgiving, dropping in to say hi, going to rewatch later for that $20. Thank you so much for that super chat. And I'm going to get to the other super chats at the end of this. If you want to support via any of the things, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, super chats, memberships, dono chat, you can do all those and we'll read your comments.
Cookies, hugs, you know, threatening letters. Maybe, you know, if somebody's got a horse, I'll accept the horse. I don't know how to feed it, but I'll take it. Anything you have, shoes, socks with holes in them, undies, whatever you want.
McNuggets, Marlboros, right.
Big Macs, Whoppers, Whopper Juniors.
Well, I heard somebody say last week, well, this is the land of the free and the home of the Whopper. So
that's so good.
I went
so
based.
Good.
So based.
Dude, based. No, but I think I want to hear what makes you so mad about this film. And part of it obviously is that Napoleon is this larger than life person, and he's a great man. And again, by great, we don't mean he's a good person. We just mean he put his boot print on the face of the earth and changed the world forever through his actions. But what makes me so mad is that it's an empty, vapid piece of art. And that's what makes me so mad, is that I will sit through a movie that is low budget, or there's messed up shots or something, or a piece of music from someone that is brand new to making music, and they don't know how to use harmony, they don't know how to audio engineer, and it's very scrappy, but there's heart in it. Yeah. I'll sit there and I'll listen and I'll go, okay, there's something of the universal human experience of what it is to be human in this.
Yeah.
This had none of that. Nothing.
Well, you know, on the one hand, I think that what movie? Oh, remember we covered what's the drumming movie that we covered?
Whiplash.
Whiplash. Remember that the guy says the two worst and most harmful words in the English language are good job, right? Well, there is a truth to that, in the sense that trying hard doesn't make great art. But on the other hand, raw talent can override many flaws, right? Just a tour de force performance. If you have, for instance, an actor who is fantastic in a role, despite the trash of the rest of the movie, that can carry you. That can carry you for something. But this movie lacks all comprehension of its subject matter. It is completely disjointed. There's no continuity between scenes. You leave feeling that you know Napoleon less than you did when you started. You don't even know if this was a guy. If this was someone. I mean, Napoleon exists in the model of Alexander the Great, Caesar, Scipio.
Napoleon exists in every child's heart who believes in him.
Napoleon. Listen, Napoleon. His uncle calls
Every
him
time someone
Napoleon.
calls Napoleon a simp, a fairy somewhere drops dead.
And look, there's also another point here, which is that Ridley Scott, I mentioned this in the last stream, that Ridley Scott said that when he was making Blade Runner, he got a call from an assistant, and they said that what's his name who played Roy Batty he's got a scene that he's written, and Ridley Scott said, "Oh, here we go." Right, an actor writes part of the script, so he went in and Rutger Hauer read the Roy Batty speech, which is and I watched Attack Ships burning off the shoulder of Orion, right?
Yeah.
Like Tears in the Rain. It's one of the great speeches, and Rutger Hauer wrote it, and he put it in the film. And Ridley Scott said that it was like Shelley. It was like a Shelley poem, and that's perfect. That is a perfect description of what that scene embodies. I mean, it's Blakean and Shelleyan, right? But he goes on to say that sometimes in a film, you don't have to show you don't have to show the big battles or the big explosions. You can have somebody saying something, and that is an example of this subversion of everything I've talked about here in terms of art and literature, where show versus tell is the rule. That is the rule. That's what makes great art. But when you have a masterful artist, they're able to take the rules and smash them if the content and the form match in terms of meaning. And so Ridley Scott earns that. He earns that in his films because the rest of the movie it's a spectacle and it's spectacular, and there's so much visual and auditory information, and everything is sort of brilliant and new and has a sheen to it. And we're in this new world. So sometimes when a character speaks and they're just telling us something, then it can be fantastic. I mean, Maximus's speech at the end of the film of Gladiator is so powerful. Like, are you not entertained? Is that not why you were here? Now it's just a bit of dialogue, but it's so perfect because he embodies. The audience doesn't even realize when you're watching it the first time that that's what you want him to say. But when he says it, you realize that's exactly what you want him to say. It's what you want to say if you were in that role. And so I expected that in this film, that there would be something innovative, some spark of brilliance, but I don't know what he did with this. This is by far his worst film. I mean, no other film that he's made comes close to how bad this is. I can't believe that this guy who is huge in movie making, he's so
he
big.
made Blade Runner and Gladiator and all these films, and the showing and telling that you brought up, it's funny because even I remember like a month or two ago, I was working on one of these demos for some of the songs that I'm recording in January 6th in my living room and releasing later in the year. So follow me on Instagram if you guys want to support. But I was telling you, and I sent you some lyrics and stuff, and I was like, "Hey, is this too much showing?" And you go, "No, like this, I like it. You know, it's you're doing it in the right way." But you look at any art, and that's always the case. And you look at Blade Runner, he just shows you the entire time. There's there's a couple scenes where it's like exposition for a minute, and exposition at the entrance of the film, and that's the only exposition you get. The whole film of Blade Runner, you get exposition in the in the opening credits, and that's it. And he just tells you. And Denis Villeneuve, who's incredible, he does the same thing in Dune, which is an incredible film. There's one scene of exposition, and it's this little robot that a guy plugs in a tape into, tells you a little bit, and the rest he just shows you. And this they don't do either. They don't show us or tell us anything.
Yeah. World building. Oftentimes the shock of the new world that we're thrown into in film is enough to bring you into it and feel like you're alive in this new world. You believe it right away because there are characters that are talking and doing things that are essential to the film. Not everything has to be narrative or plot driven, but that they are, and they don't even have to be. I'm not even talking about realism. It's not realism or naturalism that makes a great film or in terms of acting, but there has to be something that we relate to in terms of what we would essentially. It boils down to what would we do if we were in the same position, right? Or how do we understand this person? What does this mean? Why would all of these soldiers fight for Napoleon? Because the way the soldiers fought for Napoleon was the same exact reason that they crossed the Rubicon with Caesar, right?
Yeah.
Even though the Senate is back in Rome telling the soldiers, they'll all die, they'll all be arrested. We're going to have a civil war, right? We're going to have another army that's going to come and fight against you because you've been too busy and too successful out in the outlands. And that's exactly what happens with Napoleon, right? He goes into exile, and then there's a new army that takes place, and all these guys are in the same army, but they see Napoleon, and they're like, "This is our guy. We will die for this guy." And you don't get that at all. I mean, a great example of that is like in the Henry V movie with Kenneth Branagh, which I have problems with the movie, but that's the St. Crispin's Day speech, right? That's the Braveheart speech. The Braveheart speech is at face value almost kind of laughable, right? But Mel Gibson is so based that it is fucking this guy is riding on horseback, and the guy says, "We will run and we will live," right? And you believe him. Why should they fight these guys? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference to them. Seems all just for the glory of William Wallace. But William Wallace makes it clear that you have to be here because many years from now on your deathbed, right? These are the things that make men, right? To believe and to serve, and it's fine that Napoleon is only serving himself, like in terms of the movie, but we have to have other people follow him and believe in his self-service at least. Yeah. So, yeah,
he has to be a man that you can go and would go and die for and fight for. And like you said, I mean, he comes home after his exile onto this island and tries to go back to France and march on them. And he gets caught up by these French soldiers and just says, "Here's my medals. You guys are the heroes of this battle, and I miss you." And then they come and they follow him. And the beautiful thing about those, all those things that you just brought up and these other films we brought up is this inspiring thing to go, as a man or even as a person in general, to have that drive and to lay your life down and to serve for something greater, whether or not, in the long history of geopolitics and stuff, it was a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I'm not pro Napoleon, but he was a great man, like we've talked about. Yeah. That's a human thing to want to go, no, I'm part of something greater than just myself. And I'm going to lay my life down. And this film, it felt like no one that made this film was thinking that about this film. Yeah. There's no way anyone felt this way.
Yeah, the common soldier doesn't give a shit about geopolitics or the mass movements of the chessboard. They don't give a shit about any of that. They care about their honor, duty, and the guy beside them, and make sure a guy's watching their six, and all that stuff. But we have to get a sense of what that means and how real it is. Even the movie, I just watched the movie with Gerard Butler. Things are about to get sporty. And it's called Kandahar. I like him too, dude.
He's awesome. Cool. He's got charisma.
Cool. You know what his best movie is? There's a movie called Machine Gun Preacher. Which sounds so ridiculous, but it's about a real guy. Yeah, it's about a real guy, and this guy was he was a piece of shit. And then in Detroit or something, and then he was in a motorcycle gang. He was a junkie. And he did all this shit, but then somehow he ended, I don't know how he got to Africa or what he did, but he saw all these kids being affected by the, when they had all the Coney stuff. It's essentially a Coney movie. And he saw all the people like getting the Leopold II, treatment with their arms cut off in Africa. And he did all this gun running, and he goes back to Africa, and he's like building these schools and stuff, but they're attacked by these guys, this militia, and he has a machine gun and he fights, and it's a very good movie. I remember watching it, and it was very, very hard to watch because this guy, he's not perfect, and he goes back and he becomes this evangelical pastor, and he's trying to raise money for this thing, and he starts berating all the people in his congregation, and then he falls back into drug addiction. But it's because he's trying to deal with the vacuum of what's happened in his soul, and he's trying, again, he's searching for redemption. He's trying to fight for something. He's trying to fight for these children. And it's fucking awesome. It's very good. But I watched this movie Kandahar that just came out. And again, it's like, there's all this typical propaganda, all this bullshit, all this stuff about the war, but it's like, it's a good movie, dude. you know, you're
Yep.
watching this guy and he does like a Stuxnet thing in Iran and he's got to guide his translator and all this stuff. But you want him to win, you know, just through the power of being this man, you know,
Yeah.
by getting rid of the bad guys and doing all this stuff. And so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
sort of
funny.
my
We
take on it.
when we talked on the phone yesterday, and I even sent when me and Henley talked about the movie yesterday, and then this morning he texted me, and I sent him a voice message back, and I go, dude, I don't think I could talk about, like, this movie is confusing to talk about because it's so empty. Like, what are we gonna do? But I'm impressed that we made it this long and this far.
Well, and look, I don't want to.
Are you not entertained? Are you
Right.
not entertained?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to black pill anybody about the movies. I think people should go see movies. Not this one, but I think
No,
people
don't
should go
support
see
this
movies.
movie. Do not give it $1.
Yeah, I think that people should, you know, in terms of other bad movies. I mean, you got to watch bad movies sort of by accidental discovery in order to understand what great movies are. Which brings to mind one of the worst movies I've ever seen. This movie, The Accidental Tourist, which I think is probably the worst movie I've ever seen. You probably haven't even heard of it, but
Nope.
it's so bad. But look, man, I'll also put this out there. I'm not a fan of The Green Mile, and I'm not a fan of Shawshank Redemption, and that is a lot of people are not going to like that. And it's fine if you like those movies. I think that's great because
Well, here's the thing: you're
again-
not a fan, but you don't hate it and say it's an empty, vapid film
No,
devoid
I don't.
of
No,
heart.
exactly. I think that there's a lot of heart in both of those movies. I think that is the thing that drives both of those movies, and I see why people love those movies. I can completely see that, especially Shawshank Redemption. You know, he crawls out of the thing. Why he chose Enchilada Night, I will never know. He crawls through the. But I think that they're illogical. I think they're illogical, and I think that the heart in those movies overrides the practicality of what the characters go through. I think it's kind of cheap in those films. But that's just me probably being a snob with that. But just one last thing. I wanted to read what this book says about this guy, Fouché, who was the secret police guy, because this is an example of what they could have put in the movie. This says, then there was Napoleon's minister of police, the thoroughly odious, unscrupulous, but eminently efficient Joseph Fouché. Like Talleyrand, Fouché started life in the church. Typically, although he had ruthlessly suppressed a revolt against Robespierre in Lyon. After the fall of Toulon in 1793, Fouché had gloated to a colleague in Paris, tonight we will execute 1,213 insurgents. Adieu. Tears of joy flow from my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
His cruelty during the revolution had brought him spurious renown. During the massacres in Lyon, he was alleged to have been seen carrying a pair of human ears dangling from either side of his cleric's hat. But when Thermidor arrived, Fouché had acted with equal zeal against Robespierre and the Jacobins. Then, when under the Directoire, he had worked as a spy for Barras in Holland. Then it later says, he boasted a card index of who's who in the empire that was dangerously important to any ruler. Jeff Stein McCaffrey, right? Napoleon's abdication in 1814 made his peace with Louis XVIII and became the second richest man in France. But he ended life as an unwanted wanderer in Austria, cuckolded by his 26-year-old wife. He was profoundly unattractive. Fouché's character was etched into his face. Only the red rims of his half-closed eyelids relieved the identical color of his skin, hair, and eyes. According to one contemporary, yet he was said to be a kind father and devoted husband, just like Beria. The forerunner of 20th century police chiefs like Himmler and Beria, Fouché's attitude to humanity was simply expressed as remove from every citizen that which is not necessary. He was certainly one of the most accomplished politicians of all time. Napoleon saw him in his ubiquitous intelligence service as living in everybody's boots. And in both his rise and his maintenance of power, Fouché was essential to Napoleon. A vision of vice supported by crime is what they saw when Talleyrand and Fouché walked into a room. Vice and crime, right? Personified. Now, that alone would be a fantastic movie. I mean, this guy is Dick Cheney, right? He is Scooter Libby. He's in fact, he's a kind of Alan Dulles. Talleyrand and Fouché are kind of like the Dulles brothers in a way, right? One's in politics, right? One's in intelligence, and they together are just the most odious examples of human beings, and they're supremely powerful. And that is that is essential for understanding the infrastructure of Napoleon, because he did that. He used these guys, right? They were part of his network. And there's no supporting cast in this movie. There's just nobody of any note. I didn't even recognize Rupert Everett as Wellington, and that's good in a way. Usually that would be a good thing. The character, the actor disappears in the character. But this was like, is this really Wellington? What's happening? Is everyone playing a bad caricature that's not even a caricature? It's like an AI caricature. So anyway, that's all I can say about this fucking movie, man. So,
I don't want to think about this film again. I want to have a good life. I want to be happy. I want to put this behind me. It's not too late. It's almost like 9 o'clock. Some of the stores close at 10. I can still get, a pint of ice cream and take a shower with all my clothes on and just sit there eating it to make myself feel better. But this is rough, man. This is painful.
Yes. Tomorrow I want to wake up. I want to listen to George Michael singing "Last Christmas You Gave You My Heart." That's all I want to hear. That's all I want to do.
Don't do this to me right now, dude. Don't do this to me right now, Henley.
Which, by the way, is a song about him being free to be Skittles, right? If you watch the video of Last Christmas, watch the video for Last Christmas, George Michael, and notice why he's in such pain. Because in the video, he's supposed to be in love with this woman that he's with, but he makes passing glances at the guy, right? So he's not able to do that, right? So that's why he's in such pain in the video. It's my deep analysis of Last Christmas with George Michael.
Yeah, we're gonna have to schedule another stream for some time and actually do something that's we're not just angry the whole time, because I've never in my like public debates, in the apologetic stuff, in all the other streams that I've gone on, I've never felt this angry. I felt frustrated in like debates, but I've never been had this fury in me and this pain and this
that's because you're not a patriot. As soon as I get off of this stream, I'm angry at the New World Order.
I feel like I should make a Twitter and post #MeToo from Napoleon, because how bad this was.
Time's up. Ding. Yeah.
Oops, you're canceled. Oops, you lost your job. Oops.
At the end of this movie, at the end of the credits, I stood up and I said to that man behind me, "Time's up. Ding."
Oh my gosh. Melly just came in and said, "I bought tickets to see Napoleon on Sunday. Is it bad? If you can get a refund, get a refund. Do not give them a penny. Go see the Marvels instead. I'm sure that's way more entertaining than this film.
Go see Michael Fassbender's new movie about soccer. Right. That's better. That is better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The trick is that Napoleon is the guy taking your tickets, right? And he's going to say, "Oh, you want a refund? Time's up. Ding." Where were you for Thermidor, right? Shouts out to First Person Q out there who drops $2 and says, "Great movie. Great review of a terrible movie, lads." Well, thank you so much, First Person Q. All right, I'm going to read your super chats now. Should I get to those? Anything else you want to drop before? Jason just dropped your Instagram link there. So everybody, please make sure you go to Chase Haggard at Instagram, right? And also
Chase Haggard Music. Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I got everything's privated right now because January I'm recording a bunch of new tunes, and then basically after that, after I record these, I'm releasing a new song every about 2 months, God willing, for the rest of my life. I've been gearing up for this to get a bunch of tunes ready, and hope you guys will like them. Henley's heard some rough demos of some tunes. He hated them.
No, they were fucking awesome, dude. I punched a hole in the sofa. I was so fucking
one day. Awesome. This is not with one of the tunes that I'm recording soon, but one day, and I'm not joking, Henley will be a dancer in a video.
Oh, you're gonna give
the song.
You're gonna give the big reveal. Okay.
Well, that's not any of the new ones. We don't know when we're gonna do this, but I got a song that only can be performed by him.
That
That's
was top
it.
secret. That was top secret information, which I'm a vault. I never revealed the top secret shit.
Oops.
But that
Ding. Time's up.
time's up, ding. No, but you guys, you got a first insight into what's coming in 2024. Yes, we got some big plans on the way, so that's gonna be cool. All right, let me get these super chats real quick. Shouts out to Moldy out there who drops Apple who drops $11 and sends no message. Thank you so much, Moldy. Really appreciate you. That was a dono chat. Shouts out to DJ out there who sends $15 on dono chat. I'll give you the ticket money you saved me. Was definitely going to watch it, but now no chance. All right, good call. I'm glad we can make a difference. The more you know. So thank you so much for that.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. That's right, kids. What did he say in Mexican G.I. Joe? And now you know, and that is enough. Shouts out to Kat Owen who sends $5 on PayPal. Really appreciate you. She says, "Watch Lady Hamilton with Vivian Leigh for great movie. A great movie on Napoleonic era. They don't make them like they used to." Oh, good call. Thank you so much. I like Vivian Leigh. So that's a good call. It's a good throwback. Thank you so much for that. Shouts out to Thomas Henderson who drops $20 on PayPal. Thank you so much, Thomas Henderson. You are the best. Really appreciate you. Hey, shouts out to my sister out there who drops $10 and says, "Happy Thanksgiving, bro. Sorry, the movie was Les Miserables." Very clever.
Is that a good movie?
Les Miserables. Well, it's better to watch American Psycho, where he says, "Got an 8:30 res." No, what does he say? Can't do it. I got a 10 o'clock matinee of Les Mis. I got to return some videotape. No, but here's a little dramatic insight into Les Mis. It was first the production was first put on by Cameron McIntosh, and when I was at drama school, we had the 50th anniversary of the Bristol Vic, and Cameron McIntosh came to watch us perform. We did 2 separate plays, and I had to sing the Master of the House caper. I had to sing that song on a staircase at the Bristol Vic in front of Cameron McIntosh and Jeremy Irons. So
that's awesome.
I'm acquainted with Les Mis. There are a couple of movies of it. There's the one with Russell Crowe. There's one with Liam Neeson. And it's Victor Hugo. It's hard to watch. Probably the best production I've watched is with the guy from The Wire, and it was a TV production, and it is very hard to watch because Cosette, it has, she's essentially, she's a child, she's a slave to these 2 kids in a tavern, and it is miserable. It's a difficult movie to watch. And it's about, it's about heart and about redemption. And aside from the revolutionary aspects of the One More Day song, and, it's a difficult film. A difficult play. There's a version with Jeffrey Rush, where it's a dramatic version of Les Mis without the singing. That might be interesting. But in terms of
the one I'm thinking of, is the recent one that they did with Russell Crowe? Is that the one where they sing the whole movie?
Yeah. Yes.
That's brutal, dude.
It is a musical, and I'm not a fan of musicals, but
I like a musical, but singing the whole time without dialogue.
Well, there is dialogue. There is dialogue, okay. But I will say that if there was ever a musical that justifies itself as a grand musical, this is
Mamma Mia.
It's definitely. Yes.
we should review Mamma Mia, and we should do a troll stream we should do a stream, and it should be titled as like the secret esoteric meaning behind Mamma Mia, and have like pyramid eyes and stuff like that over the thumbnail. And just straight face for an hour, just talk about all these like schizo connections in Mamma Mia to big world events.
I played the Pirate King in Pirates of Penzance, which my friend called Pirates of Your Pants, which is a fun play. Cabaret is very, whatever. But it has things in it which are important geopolitically in terms of that, Liza Minnelli. But the best musical I could think of would be Rock of Ages with Tom Coombs. Have you seen? I did an analysis of that film because it's set in all the music is 80s rock, and Tom Did you know Tom Coombs is a fantastic singer? He is great.
He's fantastic at everything, dude.
He is. He is. Tom Coombs is Tom Coombs is the best that Hollywood has ever produced. I say that unironically. He's fucking awesome.
Yeah, no, he really is a superstar. Yeah.
Yeah. And my sister said, "Stop Cajun hate," but definitely hate on this trash movie. They're throwing the bon ton roulette down there on the railroad tracks, right? And then, shout out to Buster, movie about nothing from Seinfeld. Shouts out again to Real John Connor, who dropped $50 on Cash App. Really, really appreciate that. Keep talking. Let me see if I can access the super chats.
Yeah, well, the thing a lot of people don't realize about Mamma Mia is that there's a lot of predictive programming about recent events, about lockdowns, things like this, the disillusionment of the dollar, the breakdown of the family. And Mamma Mia is one of the heaviest predictive programming movies I've ever seen in my life. And little known fact is that the writer and director of Mamma Mia and the writers of the music, ABBA, were hand in hand with descendants of Soviet propaganda machines that got brought over by Project Paperclip.
Interesting. Right. So they were part of the Phoenix program.
They're basically the Phoenix. It's basically the Phoenix program, if you really think about it.
and the big event, which was the 60th anniversary yesterday, in Dallas, and part of the moon. They were part of the moon thing, right?
Yeah, they're literally part of the moon.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. It's funny. Melly brought up Grease. No joke. We watched Grease so many times, me and my brother and my sister and my cousins, at my grandparents' house, because they only had a couple VHS movies. And we watched it over and over again because the girls kept choosing to watch that. And growing up now, I realize what a terrible story that is. Like, it's entertaining, but the whole moral of the story, there's a sweet girl who's kind of like reserved and stuff. And she dates this sleazebag dude who is immature, treats her like crap. And at the end of the movie, she totally changes herself, starts smoking, wearing leather clothes and stuff. And she gets the guy. That's the moral of the
John
story.
Travolta, and I'm gay. Yeah. I want to wear a leather jacket. Yeah, I never liked Grease.
It's a weird. There's some good songs in it though. There's some good songs that I got chills that multiply.
No,
that song's sick, dude.
No, stop. No.
That song's sick.
Listen, I understand why people like that. I feel your pain. Right.
I understand your delusion of why you like that and your mental deficiency of what causes you to like that. And I don't look down on you for being lesser.
Shouts out to Melly out there who dropped $10. Red Bull Fund. That might have been the last one. Shouts out to Circle G, $2. This fell off on this one. Body of Lies. Oh, Ridley Scott fell off on this one. Body of Lies is the best. Good point. Body of Lies. Great film, folks. You know, I walked in, they said, this is Body of Lies with Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe. I said, this is a great film. It's a wonderful. Abu Bakr al-Hamza, right? That's a great film. That is 2008, Body of Lies, Ridley Scott. Great film. Shouts out to Polymathing, who drops $5 Canadian. Loving the energy between these three very fine-minded folk. Hey, thank you so much, Polymathing. Really appreciate you. Pim drops $20 super chat. Happy Thanksgiving. Drop in to say hi. Going to rewatch later. Shouts out to First Person Q, who drops $2. Great review of a terrible movie, lads. Hey, thank you so much, everybody. Very generous tonight. Wizard of Oz is considered a musical, yes. And if you want to watch an analysis of Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz, you could go over to our friend Jay Dyer's channel, where we did a deep analysis of Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz. Those are some great films. Please, you guys, go back and watch some of these most recent streams. I've been doing a lot of, I've been going back to literature again, but I did a whole series of films with Spooktober themes that were pretty. I thought, I had fun doing those. Shouts out to Andrew Cross, who drops $1.99 super chat. No comment. Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate that. What you got coming up, buddy? We know you're doing music.
Just doing music. I'm writing and recording and prepping to record. And then busy. I got hired as an assistant engineer at a local pro studio. So been doing that and just busy. And You know what would be cool is if you ever wanted to, I think it'd be interesting. I don't want to do it because I'm too close to the music stuff, but it would be cool to see you if you found a theme of like big popular albums in a time period. That would be a cool analysis, like Dark Side of the Moon and then some other big albums from that time period. I think, I mean, it depends on what the rest of the audience thinks, if they think that'd be interesting, but I think that could be interesting.
That would be cool. You know what comes to mind immediately would be the top 10 albums on the Billboard music charts, longest top 100 albums of all time. So Dark Side of the Moon's on there. Led Zeppelin 4 is on there. What's the Eagles album? Hotel California, which is
Hotel California.
LaVeyan. Yeah, it has a LaVeyan theme.
Yeah,
so that would be interesting.
That could be interesting because I just thought of this off the top of my head, and you could go, you could do that, and then obviously you could look at the time period, the geopolitics, the news, and everything going on in there. And I would love to see that. I see a couple people saying yes in the chat, but that'd be cool. But yeah, if people want to follow me, I am. I'm not posting much right now because I'm gearing up a bunch of content to push really hard at getting people to hear my music next year. So if you want to support, much appreciated at Chase Haggard Music. And thanks again so much for having me on. And, I'm glad we were able to share this. Like, trauma brings people closer together. And I feel closer to you now that we both went through this film together.
Yes, that is the French concept of jouissance, which is I wrote about this in a paper for my graduate degree, which is the struggle through tough things and events, especially in literature, especially in poetry, with an ecstatic climax. And so hopefully we have gone through that and we've reached the other side of the mountain, folks. Please come back. Make sure you like and share the stream, everybody. If you want to sponsor a stream, you can do that. You can hit me up at madmaximalism with 2 X's on gmail.com. And you can drop a theme that you want. You can sponsor a book for $100, drop a movie for $50. I've got a lot of sponsor streams still to do. I got to do the Decameron. I've got to do Geek Love by our friend Maddie. And I've got more Shakespeare and Renaissance theater coming up. I'm doing a Southern Gothic literature stream coming up, and a lot more to go. One more super chat here. Here's Andrew Cross, $4.99, says War and Peace made in the 60s was better. Napoleon overlooking Moscow and walking in the Kremlin with the icon of Christ looking into his soul. Thank you so much, Andrew Cross.
I'm going to check that out, man. Thank you.
Yeah. I did a Dostoevsky. What did we do? We did Dostoevsky. We did The Underground Man with Tristan Haggard out there. Shouts out to Tristan Haggard. And I've done a couple of music streams. You guys can go back and watch those. Especially I did the Led Zeppelin stream. I did a Britpop stream. Analysis of those things. So again, hey everybody, thank you out there, and sincere, deep, and heartfelt wishes for y'all on this Thanksgiving. We're going into the new year. Let's make it a great Christmas time, a great snowy season, and a great new year. And was it worth it? Yeah, if you're strong enough, right? Keep on LIVIN. All right. So thank you, everybody. That's all we got. All right, y'all. Peace. Love you. Peace.